A bolder version of me. Book 3 of the Destiny Clark Saga. Written by Cindy Ray Hale. Text copyright 2019 by Cindy Ray Hale. Production copyright 2022 by Cindy Ray Hale. Author's note. This is a rewrite of the original series, The Destiny Trilogy by Cindy Ray Hale. This book takes place during the events of third portion of Destiny, Book 1 of the Destiny Trilogy. Scenes and events have been changed and rearranged. I hope you love this version of the story even better than the original. But don't forget, the original story is always available for purchase at smarturl.it/destinybookone. For Adrian, who helps me on my journey to find my greater self. Chapter 1, Destiny. Twinkling lights threaded across the ceiling of the gym. I swallowed against a dry, scratchy throat and smoothed the skirt of my red, homecoming dress with sweaty palms as I scanned the room for Isaac. I spotted him standing near the punch table, wearing a red tie and a gray suit. His dark hair was styled to perfection, and a dazzling smile stretched across his face. Although I was terrified to make our relationship public, my heart soared. He was mine, and I was his. He crossed the room and pulled me into a tight embrace. I breathed in sandalwood, and my head spun as Isaac's familiar cologne filled my senses. He bent his head to mine and kissed me. Gasps sprouted around us, but he buried his hands in my curls as the kiss continued. He pulled away with a satisfied look on his face and took my hand, interlacing our fingers. "Come on," he said, tugging on my hand as he led me across the gym floor. "Where are we going?" I asked, spotting my older brother, Michael, gaping at us with a stormy look. "You'll see." A devious grin tugged on the corner of his lips. I caught a glimpse of my younger sister Olivia as we passed, and she shook her head at me, disappointment clouding her eyes. Isaac led me to the stage set up at the far side of the gym. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "Trust me." He squeezed my hand. I followed him up the steps, and he stopped in front of the microphone, tapping it. The sound reverberated through the room. "Hey, everyone," Isaac said, flashing his signature smile, the one that made him look more like a celebrity than anyone who could possibly be dating me. A rupture of female catcalls rippled throughout the crowd. "I have an announcement," Isaac said into the microphone. "I love you, Isaac," a lone female voice screamed from the crowd. Isaac saluted her with a grin. "I'm the luckiest guy in the world." "Do you know why?" Isaac wrapped his arm around me. "Because this beautiful girl, Destiny Clark, is my new girlfriend." The crowd stilled and silence hung over the gymnasium. A cricket chirped in the back corner. "Wahoo!" Hannah screamed, clapping and cheering, from where she stood next to Evan. Isaac hugged my shoulders, oblivious to the crowd's reaction, and then led me down the stairs. "Let's go find a seat together," he said in a cheery voice. "The banquet should start soon." And then I saw them. My parents were in the back corner, probably next to that cricket. They weren't saying anything. They just stood, wearing their disapproval. Hannah sidled up next to me. "You guys are officially official." "Eek. I can tell everyone now. I have to go tell my mom." She maneuvered her way through the round tables spread throughout the room, and to my surprise, her parents sat at a table. The missionaries from church sat with them, talking with Hannah's mom. And then Isaac's dad, Dr. Robinson, our school's headmaster, stood in front of us. Menacing eyes bored into me, and a tightness in my stomach began to form. "This ends now." Isaac laughed. "You can't stop us. If you try, we'll just go behind your back." Dr. Robinson's face turned a strange shade of purple. "You do realize that I have friends in high places in the government. I've already submitted an extermination order against all Mormons. By the end of the month, you will no longer be welcome in this state, and those who remain will pay." A tugging on the bottom of my skirt caught my attention. I looked down to see Preston's little sister Anna. "Good job, Destiny. You've killed us all." I awoke with a start. Isaac's arm was wrapped around me, my head on his shoulder, as the credits rolled on the movie we'd been watching together at Hannah's house. "Did you fall asleep?" he asked. My breaths came out, raw and jagged. "Are you okay?" Isaac asked, turning to get a better look at me. Yeah. I said, feigning nonchalance. The movie was just intense. The next morning I woke up in Hannah's bed and remembered the horrifying dream I'd had the night before during the movie. Although I'd promised Isaac we could go public with our relationship, it terrified me now. Isaac couldn't know how much it bothered me. I wasn't so sure he'd understand. It wasn't like he'd ever had to deal with people shunning him for his religion. Hannah snored beside me. I didn't want to wake her, but my stomach growled. I scooted off the bed and cracked her bedroom door. The smell of French toast wafted up the stairs from the kitchen, and I closed her door behind me. Her little brother Lucas was already up playing video games in his room, and Hannah wouldn't appreciate getting woken up by the annoying explosions and occasional outbursts. A male voice drifted up the stairs, and my heart raced. Isaac was already over here to work for the day? I glanced at the stairs and tapped my bottom lip. Go downstairs with a bedhead to see Isaac, or go brush my hair first? I grabbed the elastic from my wrist and ran my fingers through my hair, pulling it up into a messy bun. I hoped it looked okay. A quick glance in the hall mirror let me know that I looked passable, and my heart pounded as I descended the stairs to see my guy. I never tired of seeing him, especially now that we were together. "Hey." His face split into a wide smile when he saw me coming down the back staircase. He sat on a stool, pulled up to the bar while his Aunt Bethany fixed breakfast. By the time I'd reached the bottom step, he'd left his stool and had made his way to my side. He brushed a loose tendril of hair from my face and placed a gentle kiss on my lips. I held back a gasp. Hannah's mom was standing right there. "Isaac? Did you just kiss her?" Hannah's mom asked from the stove. "Yes, ma'am, I did. I didn't know you were dating." She sounded so delighted. I doubted she'd be so happy if she knew I was a Mormon. "Oh, we're not. We just like to kiss sometimes." "Isaac." I covered my mouth with a hand to hold back my shocked laughter. "I'm just kidding. Y'all are way too cute." Mrs. Miller tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear and turned back to the stove. I smacked his chest and walked past him to sit in the living room. I wanted to be mad at Isaac for not trying harder to keep our relationship a secret in front of Hannah's mom, but he was so stinking charming I couldn't find it in me to get angry. He followed me to the couch, and we plopped down together. He leaned his head toward mine until our foreheads almost touched. "Hey, I'm sorry I kissed you in front of my aunt. I know you want to keep things quiet right now." I breathed in his delicious smell and sighed. "Look, it's one thing to let Hannah's mom know, but when you come over to practice Les Mis with me at my house next week, we've got to do a better job of keeping our relationship a secret in front of my family." "I'm serious. I understand. I can do better, I promise." He held up 2 fingers. "Scout's honor." I rolled my eyes at him. "You know 2 fingers is for Cub Scouts, right? Boy Scouts use 3. Isaac shrugged. "Whatever." We sat together and browsed through some silly videos on Isaac's phone until Mrs. Miller called out from the kitchen, "Breakfast is ready." I glanced over my shoulder toward her with a furrowed brow. What if she told Dr. Robinson about the cute new girl Isaac was dating and how adorable they are together? She won't say anything to him. Don't worry about it. Aunt Bethany's too busy with work and her own life to tell my dad about my dating life. I looked back at him with a raised brow. "How did you know what I was thinking?" "It was written all over your face." He put a hand to my cheek. "You're so cute when you're worried. But you don't need to be. I promise it will all work out." "You sound like Hannah right now." "I think she's right." Mrs. Miller popped her head back into the doorway. "Speaking of Hannah, Can one of you go wake her up? I can't seem to get her down here. I bit my lip. She hadn't heard us talking about her telling Dr. Robinson our secret, had she? I hopped up to go wake up the sleeping dead and glanced at her as I passed through the kitchen. She bustled about setting the table with plates, humming to herself. She seemed cheerful enough. I let loose a sigh of relief and turned the corner to climb the stairs up to Hannah's room. Hopefully, Isaac was right about everything working out. But somehow, I wasn't so sure it would be as easy as he seemed to think. I found Hannah in her room all curled up in her covers. I sat next to her and pushed on her shoulder. Hey, sleepyhead. Wake up. Hannah rolled over to face me and yawned. She rubbed her eyes and squinted at me. How are you awake already? I couldn't sleep. Why not? My bed is the most comfortable thing ever right now. She snuggled deeper into the covers like that would prove her point. Bad dream. I told her about the dream I'd had. She sat up in bed and looked at me with her hair sticking up all over the place. You think my uncle hates you that much? It's not that he hates me. He hates what I stand for, and I'm sure he won't want me dating his son. You don't know that. How can you say that? I took 7th grade Bible class from him. He was super clear about how he felt about Mormons. He thinks we're of the devil. And now your mom saw Isaac kissing me, and she's going to tell him. My heart pounded harder in my chest as I spoke. Hannah studied me with a thoughtful expression. You're probably right. He probably doesn't like Mormons. And maybe my mom will tell him. Maybe not. You just need to realize that other people will fight against you, but you need to do what you feel in your heart is right for you. My mouth opened, but the thought I'd just formed had flown from my head. Hannah was right. I couldn't live my life in fear of what others might do. I had to move forward, doing what felt right in my heart. And right now, being with Isaac felt right. Mostly. As long as I didn't think too much about what our parents would have to say about it. I want to be with Isaac. But it won't be easy to go public about our relationship. I'm not looking forward to all the trouble people will give me. You can't sit around, worrying about it all day. You need to focus on what's best for you. Speaking of what's best, how did Isaac take the news that you'd never actually dated Preston? He was cool about it. It was so hard to tell him the truth about it though. But I'm glad we got that out in the open. I don't enjoy having to keep some big secret from him. Hannah looked away. I know what you mean. I wondered if she regretted hiding the fact that Isaac was her cousin back when we'd first met. Do you think he's jealous of Preston? Isaac jealous of Preston? It was weird to think about two guys fighting over me like that. Maybe. But he has nothing to be jealous of. Isaac should know that I want him. Not Preston. Hannah studied my face, and I squirmed under her scrutiny. You sure about that? You sound like you're trying to convince yourself. I gave her an exasperated look. Are you kidding me? I've wanted Isaac for a long time and now I finally have him. Hannah gave me a knowing smile that only infuriated me further. No need to get all mad about it. It was just a question. Sometimes Hannah was too nosy for her own good. The last thing I wanted to think about was how I felt about Preston. I had enough on my plate as it was. I'd be doing good to keep the relationship I had from falling apart once our parents found out. And it was a matter of time before they would. I could only convince Isaac to keep it quiet for so long. Hannah threw on jeans and an oversized t-shirt and put her hair into a big messy bun on top of her head. She checked her phone and squealed. Evan said he's coming over. That was 5 minutes ago. We headed downstairs to eat breakfast with Isaac before Evan showed up. Look who joined the living, Isaac greeted Hannah with a teasing smile. Whatever. Hannah made a face at him. You know you'd be sleeping too if you didn't have to work. You can keep making those excuses to yourself if it makes you feel better. Isaac gave Hannah a big cheesy smile. Hannah rolled her eyes and turned to me. It's too early to deal with him. You talk to Isaac. I'm getting food before I deal with his nonsense again. I smiled at her as she walked to fill her plate with French toast. I scooted into the chair next to Isaac. I don't mind talking to him. He smiled and moved his chair closer to me. A tap sounded on the back door, and I looked up to see Evan's blonde head through the glass. Hannah twisted away from the stove and set her half-filled plate of breakfast onto the island. She squealed and opened the door for him. She wrapped her arms around his neck before he could even step inside and planted a kiss on him. He stumbled back, laughing. Whoa. She grabbed his arm and tugged him inside. Come eat breakfast with us. My mom made a ton of French toast. There should be enough for you, too. Hey, y'all. Evan greeted us as he stepped past the island. He took in my chair, scooted all close to Isaac's, and raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Hannah pulled a plate down from the cupboard and piled French toast on for him. She poured maple syrup all over his plate. Mrs. Miller came into the kitchen. Hey Evan. You came all this way to come see us? Hannah rolled her eyes at her mom. Oh yeah. From next door. My mom may have a cheesy sense of humor, but at least she makes good food. Thank you for sharing your food with me, Mrs. Miller, Evan said. You're always welcome to come eat with us, Evan. I'd rather y'all be under my roof where I can keep an eye on the two of you and keep you out of too much trouble. Hannah getting herself into trouble? Isaac asked. That would never happen. Shut up, Isaac, Hannah said, shoving his shoulder playfully. I gave them a good-natured smile. It was fun to watch their relationship. They were so close and joked so easily with each other, it was no surprise I'd thought they had a thing for each other before I knew she was his cousin. And now I was joking with Isaac like that. A few months ago, I never would have believed that I'd be so familiar with Isaac, let alone dating him. It was shocking to think how many things could change in such a short amount of time. I just hoped I'd be able to keep him. Chapter 2, Isaac. I poured milk over my raisin bran and put the cap back on the jug. Digging my spoon into the bowl, I took my first bite. Dad walked into the room and rummaged around in the cabinet behind me, pulling out what sounded like a skillet. Good morning, son. I munched on my cereal and mumbled a reply between spoonfuls. Dad cracked a few eggs into the skillet and sprinkled cheese on top, mixing the two together. His breakfast smelled a lot better than my cereal tasted. But putting that much effort into cooking sounded too hard. I was exhausted from staying up late with Destiny at Hannah's and then texting Destiny late last night. That girl had me whipped. And I was okay with that. More than okay with it. But I wished I didn't have to keep everything so secret. It wasn't my style. I didn't enjoy hiding things. I had to show Destiny that she didn't need to hide our relationship from the world. Eventually, she'd see that everything would work out for us. Dad pulled out the chair next to me and sat down with a steaming plate of scrambled eggs. I eyed his food hungrily but served myself another bowl of cereal instead. How are things going with Destiny Clark? I set the box down and poured more milk into my bowl. What do you mean? I worked to keep my voice neutral. Had Aunt Bethany said something to him about us dating? Destiny wouldn't be happy if that were the case. I understand you have been spending a lot of time with her for practices and such, and I want to make sure you know to keep your distance. Why would I need to keep my distance? I fought hard to keep the edge out of my voice, but I heard defensiveness creeping into my words. We've been over this. If you don't watch your emotions, she can entice you. I've seen it happen time and time again with these Mormons. They get a hold of you, and before you know what's happened, they've pulled you right into their web of lies. I swallowed hard. Was that what Destiny had done to me? At this point, I wasn't so sure I even cared if she had. All I cared about was being with her. We'd figure the religion stuff out. Dad glared at me. You haven't answered my question. What question was that again? I shoved another spoonful of cereal into my mouth. How are things with Destiny? Oh. Yeah. I finished chewing. Things are great, Dad. Well, that was about as honest an answer I could muster up for him. I pressed my mouth close to keep from laughing. What do you mean by great? We're getting lots of practice in. All kinds of practice. Before Dad questioned me further, Josh shuffled into the room, wailing about how he couldn't find his homework sheet he'd worked hours on last night. He tore through the kitchen, shoving aside stacks of mail, dumping papers all across the floor. Dad turned angrily to Josh. How many times are you going to lose your homework? I can't keep making excuses for you. Eventually, you'll realize that your choices have consequences. If you'd been more responsible with your homework and put it away properly last night instead of playing video games until who knows how late, you wouldn't be having this problem right now. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm trying my best, Josh shouted back, his face red. Then your best isn't good enough. How do you expect to have a future if these are the choices you keep making? I can tell you right now that no university will put up with this kind of behavior from you. I'm only a freshman. I don't think they care, yet. Oh, they care. Every grade you make will end up on your permanent record from now on. The good schools will pick the students who really prove to them they can apply themselves. Any day now they'll be lining up to offer Isaac scholarships. Mark my words. Josh's face hardened, and he turned away from Dad and stomped out of the room and up the stairs. Dad shook his head in exasperation. I don't see why he isn't getting it. I kept my eyes on my cereal and chewed steadily, hoping he'd forget to bring Destiny back up again. Later that morning at school, I met up with Destiny at her locker. Her face broke out into a smile when she saw me like, for just a second, she'd forgotten that she wanted to keep our relationship status quiet. When I got close to her, she turned her gaze from me, looking around at the crowded hallway. Hey, I murmured. She looked up at me with a stack of books clutched to her chest. Hey. I'm, stopping by to talk about setting up practice and stuff. I stumbled over my words with a big goofy grin. She licked her lips and returned my smile. Oh yeah. We're still meeting at my house tonight, right? For practice and stuff. I bit my bottom lip. She looked good enough to kiss right there in the hallway. I was having the hardest time not taking her in my arms. I leaned closer to her. Yeah. Tonight. 6 o'clock. She stared into my eyes, transfixed, and my breath stopped in my throat. I clenched my fists at my sides to keep from running my hands through her hair. The bell rang, knocking me from my stupor. Hadn't you better get to class, son? I whipped my head around to see Dad scowling over at me. You too, Miss Clark. Destiny's face paled, and she backed away from me and fled down the hall. I looked over my shoulder to where Dad had been standing, but he'd already stepped into a nearby classroom with his attention pulled away by a teacher. I tightened my jaw. Hopefully, this encounter wouldn't make Destiny more skittish than she already was about going public. The front door to the Clark home swung open, and Destiny greeted me with a smile that sped up my pulse. Come on in, she said. We stepped from the foyer into the adjoining formal living room. An upright piano stood against the wall to the right. A large portrait of Destiny's family hung over the couch. I kept expecting to see something weird or cultish, but everything seemed normal. Homie. I slid onto the piano bench, and Mrs. Clark came into the room. Do you guys need a pianist? She asked. Do you play? I asked. Don't you remember? I used to play at Bethel, sometimes when you were little. That's right. That was a long time ago. I stood up, and Mrs. Clark scooted onto the piano bench in my place. Do y'all have 2 more copies of this? Mrs. Clark asked, pointing at the sheet music on the piano. This one's Michael's. I have mine right here, Destiny said, bending to unzip the backpack at her feet. Sorry, I forgot to bring mine, I said. Don't worry about it. She waved a hand in the air. You two can share. When Destiny flipped open her folder, a small, torn scrap of paper fluttered out onto the floor. I bent to pick it up, flipped it over, and chuckled at the girly handwriting. What's so funny? She leaned over and saw that the paper was littered with tiny hearts and our names written together. Oh, my gosh. Give me that, she shrieked, snatching it from my hands. What is it? Mrs. Clark asked. Nothing, she said, wadding it up in her fist. Oh, she just had the name of some guy from school written on there. I winked at her with suppressed laughter. It was actually a pretty worn-out looking piece of paper. It must have been really old. Shut up. She shot me a disapproving look. You were not supposed to see that. I shrugged. You're free to like whoever you want. It doesn't bother me. She stared at me, her brow furrowed in such a cute way. I gave her a crooked smile and gave her a reassuring shrug. I was only doing my part to keep our secret like she wanted. She must have understood because she grinned back. She ripped the paper into tiny shreds and shoved the mess into her pocket. Mrs. Clark gave her a strange expression. Don't even ask, Mom. We're so not talking about this. She glanced sideways at me. Let's sing our song and forget that ever happened, okay? I stepped close to her, closer than she liked with her mom in the room. I gripped my side of the music folder and murmured so that only she heard, not a chance. She blushed furiously. How fun. We ran through our song 3 times. Singing with Destiny was magical. I felt so close to her as our voices blended. The music carried me to another place. After finishing the 3rd time, Mrs. Clark said, You two sound fabulous together. Thanks. I said brightly. It's much easier for me to focus on singing now that we have you to play the piano. You play well. Hey, Isaac. Michael stood in the doorway with Preston. My jaw tightened. One look at the two of them, and the pleasant moment soured. A timer buzzed in the kitchen. Mrs. Clark called over her shoulder, Olivia, would you mind pulling the lasagnas out of the oven? They should be done by now. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other. Smells great. Y'all look like you're about to have dinner, so I should probably head out. No, stay for dinner, Mrs. Clark insisted. You, too, Preston. Preston said, sure, at the same time I said, oh no, I wouldn't want to impose. Well, that was awkward. You wouldn't be imposing. We have 2 giant lasagnas. There will be plenty for everyone, Mrs. Clark said. I glanced at Preston and caught him staring at Destiny. I cleared my throat. There was no way I was leaving my girlfriend alone with him. All right. I'll stay. Panic flashed across Destiny's features. Was she worried I might bring something up about the fake boyfriend thing to him? It had been hard for her to admit it had been a lie. She'd been brave enough to tell me the truth. We'd had too many secrets between us. I needed to tell her the truth about Green's plan to dig up dirt on the Mormons. He still thought I was carrying the plan out. Once we made our relationship public, he'd really think I was launching into the plan. If even a hint of that plan got back to Destiny, it could be over between us. Unless I explained it to her and begged for forgiveness. The whole thing had been such a stupid mistake. After spending so much time with Destiny and being in her home, I wasn't convinced Mormons were even all that bad. They just seemed so down to earth. How could these people be in a cult? Destiny bustled around the kitchen to help her mom set the table and put together the last-minute items for dinner. You need some help? I asked. Destiny gave me a breathtaking smile and asked, do you want to mix up a pitcher of lemonade? Sure. Where do you keep the pitchers? I looked around. The kitchen was huge, with oak cabinets and black granite countertops. There were so many cabinets I had no clue where to start. Preston opened the cabinet next to me and handed me a pitcher. Oh, thanks, I said, feeling lame. You know where we keep the pictures? Olivia asked Preston. You really do come over here a lot. Maybe you should move into Michael's room since you're probably here more than your own house. He already has, Michael joked. He has his own pile of junk in the corner of my room. Yeah, I've been meaning to take that stuff back home. I've been busy, okay? Yeah, mowing lawns like there's no tomorrow, Olivia said. Once the grass dies in a couple of weeks, what are you going to do to earn money? Destiny asked him. He's got it figured out, Michael said. Okay, now to find where they kept the lemonade mix. I walked over to the pantry door and scanned the shelves inside. I have several tree work jobs lined up, Preston explained. How are you going to do tree work? Destiny asked. You don't even have a chainsaw. I do now, he said with the broad smile of a little boy who'd just gotten a shiny new toy. I've been setting aside money for a while now, and Michael and I got one today. She smiled back at him like his happiness had infected her. I frowned and sidled up next to her. Can you help me find the lemonade mix? Sure, she said as she stepped up to the pantry and opened the door. Here it is. She handed it to me. Thanks. I gave her a tight smile. Sorry about that. Don't worry about it. She studied me with a worried expression. Had I appeared jealous? Olivia gave her a wry smile. Quit flirting with Preston and pay attention to your guest who's trying to help. What was that supposed to mean? Destiny glared at Olivia, turned around, and placed the last 2 cups on the table without a word. Okay, everyone, get in here and take a seat, Mrs. Clark called. We crowded around the table, and Mr. Clark emerged from the nearby office. Hey there, Bishop, Preston said. Oh hey, Preston. Are you eating with us again? Yup, Preston said. Mr. Clark saw me and extended his hand. I shook it, and he said, How are you? It's Isaac, right? My wife said you were over practicing today. Was it my imagination, or was there hostility in his eyes? He took his seat at the head of the table. I gazed around the room and asked, Where should I sit, to no one in particular. Anywhere you'd like is fine, Mr. Clark said. I sunk into the empty seat next to Destiny. She looked at me with an unreadable expression. All this hiding was getting on my nerves. It wasn't my style. Why do I have to sit at the bar? Elijah whined. I remembered Destiny saying that he was 11. Don't be rude. We have guests, Olivia said. When the food had been blessed and the scramble to fill plates had slowed, I cleared my throat. I have a question. The conversation stilled, and the group turned their attention toward me. If I wanted to learn more about your church, how could I do that? That's out of the blue, Olivia said and glanced sideways at Destiny. Destiny stared back at Olivia with surprise. I looked back down the table toward Mr. Clark. If you'd like to learn more, you need to talk to a set of full-time missionaries. They have a series of lessons they teach. We can set up an appointment with them so you can talk to them at our house, Mr. Clark explained. My heart soared with hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for us to have a normal relationship. If I convinced Destiny's parents I was interested in their church, they wouldn't have anything to say against us. But, Mr. Clark continued, I recommend you speak with your parents first. I'm not comfortable setting anything up behind their backs. Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah, right. I wouldn't be talking to my parents about any of this. The less they knew, the better. Mom might be okay about it, but Dad would overreact. My heart pounded, and a new hope lit within me. There was still a chance for us. Everything would work out. I looked across the table at Destiny for the briefest moment. But it was just long enough to see her eyes softening. Across the table, Michael and Preston shoved forkfuls of lasagna into their mouths, neither of them speaking, neither of them meeting my eye. So, Destiny, Olivia said. Did you ever decide who to go to the homecoming banquet with? She gave Destiny a sneaky smile and jerked her head toward Preston. I tightened my grip on my fork and studied Destiny. She stared at her plate for a moment and then said, "I'm just going with Shanice this year." Preston looked away with a pained expression, and something clicked in my mind. He'd thought he'd had a chance with her. She was my girlfriend. It took an intense amount of willpower to keep from telling him off. I was done with the whole secret romance thing. I couldn't wait until homecoming, so I could show everyone how I felt about Destiny. Chapter 3, Isaac. I scanned the entrances to the dimly lit gym. Destiny wandered in the south entrance next to Hannah and Evan. I strode across the gym, and when she spotted me, her eyes brightened. Her attire for the evening made her look like a Greek goddess. Her hair was loose and wavy, and she wore a white dress tied with a blue sash. "Isaac," Hannah called. She had on a knee-length black dress. I lifted a hand in greeting and grinned. Finally, we could drop the act and show our true feelings. Destiny stood near me, and as I breathed in her floral perfume, I wrapped my arm around her waist, not caring who noticed. If people would hate on us, let them hate. "You look fantastic," I said to Destiny with a grin. "What are you doing?" she whispered. She pushed my hand down, but I spun her so she faced me. "You promised we could stop hiding tonight, remember?" Destiny's mouth opened slightly, and her brow furrowed in worry, but she didn't pull away. "We need to get pictures together," Hannah said, whipping out her phone. "Shanice, can you take a picture of us?" Shanice and Deshawn came over to where we were standing. Shanice took the phone that Hannah had been brandishing. I stood near Destiny and put my arm around her shoulder. Shanice snapped the photo and handed the device back to Hannah, who immediately began fiddling with the screen. "We look so awesome." I glanced across the room. Aspen posed with Will to get her picture taken. She was standing tiptoe on one foot with her ankle in the air behind her, kissing him on the cheek. For the first time, it didn't bother me. They deserved each other. "You're sitting with us, right?" Hannah asked me. "Of course," I said. Just then, Jessie Larson and Sophie Atwood bounded up to me. "Isaac, can we get a picture with you?" Jessie piped. I gazed in Destiny's direction, but she turned aside to urge Hannah to find a table. "Sure." Jessie wrapped her arm around my waist and leaned in close. Too close. Jessie was as subtle as a thunderstorm. As we stood there, more girls showed up, asking for pictures. At the first chance, I slipped aside from the growing crowd of ladies who were looking for a photo opportunity with me. I sank into the empty chair between Destiny and Hannah. "It's nice to see you made it out of there alive," Hannah joked. "I take it the female members of the student body have noticed that you're not with Aspen anymore?" "Something like that." I scooted my chair closer to the table. "Not that it matters." "Since I'm totally unavailable," I said to Destiny, flashing a smile. She lowered her lashes, but I didn't miss the joyful expression that crossed her face. After dinner, several groups mingled around the gym. Destiny and I stood to join them, but once again, several people came up to me trying to make conversation. 5 minutes later, I spotted Destiny standing beside a cluster of balloons, and I walked to her. I stepped closer and smiled. Her eyes melted into blue watery circles. "Hey." I leaned my head toward hers. "You want to get out of here?" Her mouth dropped open. "Like away from the school?" "Yeah. I felt reckless tonight." "Won't you be missed?" "I don't care." "I'd rather be with you," I said. "You came with Shanice, right?" She nodded. "Tell her you're going home with me. She'll understand." "Don't you want to wait to discover who gets crowned homecoming king?" "It'll probably be you," she said. "Nah, let them give it to Will." "I don't care anymore." "Well, I want to find out." "They're about to announce it." "Can't we stay until then and then leave?" "All right." Just for you. She responded with a sweet smile. Dad walked to the middle of the stage, clutching an envelope. He lifted the microphone from its stand. It's time to announce our homecoming king and queen, he said. The Bethel Baptist Academy homecoming queen for this year will be, he pulled a slip of paper from the envelope. Aspen Adams. Are you sure we can't go? I asked, my mouth close to Destiny's ear. She laid a hand on my arm and looked into my eyes with sympathy. I'm sorry. I should have realized this would be hard for you. It's not hard. I just don't want to be here. Destiny slid her arm around mine and gave me a disbelieving look, but didn't comment. Aspen strutted onto the stage like she wasn't only queen of our little school, but queen of the entire world. I could hardly watch. How had I never noticed this side of her? I'd been so taken by her appearance I hadn't realized what an arrogant person she was. Dad placed a tiara on her head, and Aspen's smile was triumphant. I'd better not be voted king. I'd rather clean Josh's toilet than be up there with her tonight. And that was saying something. His bathroom was a scary place. Dad beamed, and I was sure he was assuming, along with the rest of the student body, they would crown me king. And now, this year's homecoming king will be, he opened the second envelope and scanned the name on the paper, and his brow knit together for a moment before becoming smooth once again. He lifted the microphone to his lips. Michael Clark. Relief flooded through me. The crowd broke into applause, but underneath the cheering, a few murmurs of complaint rumbled behind me. Aspen's face contorted in shock and horror, and I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. Woohoo! Go Michael! Hannah called from beside Destiny, who clapped and cheered exuberantly. I recovered enough from my overwhelming relief and surprise to remember to join in the applause. Michael walked up to the stage with a stunned expression on his face. Dad placed the crown on his head stiffly, his brow creased and his eyes serious. He probably wished there was a way to prevent Michael from getting the crown, but he'd been voted in fairly by the other students. Michael and Aspen stood together for pictures, and Aspen plastered a gigantic fake smile onto her face. I didn't see that coming, Shanice said. I put my arm around Destiny's shoulders and grinned down at her. I've never been so glad to lose. Destiny laughed, a mirthful sound that boosted my spirits. No matter what came between us, as long as I could hear her laugh like that, we'd be okay. Chapter 4, Destiny. I slid my hand into Isaac's. This PDA stuff would take some getting used to. I thought I'd be terrified to show the world I was dating him, but now that I'd tried it, I decided it wasn't so bad. There was something satisfying about seeing the fury on Jesse's face from across the room. The haters would hate. I couldn't hide my relationship forever, could I? I might as well get it over with. Are you ready to go? I asked Isaac. Am I ever, he said. Have you talked to Shanice yet? Covering a hand over my mouth, I said, I forgot. That would have been bad. I scanned the room to spot where she'd gone. Isaac? Jessie called from about 30 feet away like a cat tracking her prey. She must have spotted us trying to leave together. Ever the gentleman, Isaac turned to her. Jessie eyed him like he was a delicious treat. I shot her a dirty look. She grinned back and ran her fingers through her silken, red strands. Irritation flickered in Isaac's eyes. I found Shanice by a cluster of balloons talking to Hannah and Evan. Hey Shanice, I won't need a ride home. Ooh girl, what's that supposed to mean? Shanice asked with arched eyebrows and a sneaky smile. You can wipe that smile right off your face. Isaac's a total gentleman. We just want to be alone. You sure about that? Shanice said, giving me a disbelieving stare. I've seen the way he's been looking at you. Believe me, Hannah said, rolling her eyes. She's right. He won't even step foot in a girl's bedroom. See? I said. Whatever, Shanice said. You have fun and don't you go getting yourself into too much trouble with your parents. I cringed at her last words. Thanks for bringing them up. I'm leaving now, I said, jabbing my thumb toward the doors. They retreated, and I spun to find myself face to face with Jessie. Where are you going, Destiny? Jessie asked, tossing her head to the side. None of your business, I retorted, stepping around her. She spun around, grabbing my arm. Oh, I think it is my business. You're leaving with Isaac, aren't you? Like I said, that's none of your business, I said, shaking her hand off my arm. If it has to do with Isaac, I make it my business. Not anymore, you don't, I said, fighting the urge to claw her eyes out with my fresh manicure. What? Jessie laughed. You think he wants you? What would Isaac want with you? He may take you somewhere tonight, but he's on the rebound and you were easy to pick up. He may even stay with you for like, a week. Who knows, if you're lucky, maybe even 2. But eventually, he'll see you for what you really are, and you'll be tossed out like a bag of garbage. Her words slammed into me like a fist to the gut. You know what? I don't need this conversation. I turned to walk away, but Jessie knocked into me, spilling her cup of punch down the bodice of my white dress. You should watch where you're going, she said. I gasped and bit my lip, tasting blood. Are you okay? Isaac said, rushing to my side, his eyes full of concern. All I could gasp out was Jessie. I was on the verge of tears, but I refused to cry in front of the entire school. I wouldn't. I know. I saw the whole thing. He stared at my mouth and tenderly brushed his thumb across my bottom lip. How'd this happen? He pulled his hand away, revealing smear of red on his thumb. I bit my lip. I was so upset. My voice broke. It wasn't so much the embarrassment of having punch spilled on me or my dress getting ruined that bothered me enough to bite my lip. It was what Jessie had said before she spilled the punch that did it. The worst part was, I believed every word she'd said. It was logical. I was Isaac's rebound girl. He would drop me like garbage. Her words had hit me to the core, and I knew they would haunt me. After what she'd said, I wanted to burrow into my pillow and cry all night long. Isaac put an arm around me. Let's get you to the bathroom to get cleaned up. I want to go home. I can't go anywhere looking like this, I said, using the soiled dress as an excuse. Isaac couldn't know what Jessie had really done to hurt me. Because he'd see her point, and he'd agree. And he'd leave me. Go to the bathroom, dry off, and I'll take you home. Okay? I nodded stiffly. Okay, thanks. All right. I'll meet you at my truck in 5 minutes. I'm parked in my regular spot. Opening the bathroom door, I sighed with relief to find it deserted. Bunching several paper towels under a stream of cold water, I dabbed at the bright red stain across my chest and down my torso. But it was no use. Hannah shuffled into the bathroom and came to an abrupt stop when she spotted me. What happened to your dress? Jessie happened, I said bitterly. Are you serious? Did she do it on purpose? Hannah balled her hands into fists at her sides like she was contemplating punching Jessie in the nose. It doesn't matter. I hated how deflated my voice sounded. At least Mom was a master at removing stains. If it weren't for that, I'd be a lot more disappointed. The groceries had been sparse the past week, and I suspected Mom had used some grocery money to buy my dress. Yes, it does. You can't let her get away with this. Just because she's jealous of you because you're with Isaac doesn't mean she gets to attack you with punch. I gazed in the mirror, and everything seemed funny. I giggled hysterically. What's so funny? Hannah asked. I look like Eponine. How's that? The stain looks like the blood she has on her dress in her death scene. If it had been ratty peasant clothes instead of a formal, I could save it and wear it in the musical for when I got shot. Hannah looked at me with her arms crossed and shook her head. You have lost it. That's okay. I still love you. And so will Isaac. Go see him. Show Jesse that a stupid stain on your dress won't keep you from him. You know what? You're right. Why should I care what she says? She's sad and jealous. I'm here to have fun with Isaac, and that's what I plan to do. I stepped outside the bathroom with Hannah at my heels and saw Jessie and her friend standing outside the bathroom. When she glimpsed me, she gave me a big fake smile. Looking good, Destiny. The surrounding girls giggled and whispered amongst themselves. I smiled right back at her. Thanks, Jessie. You look good, too. Y'all have fun tonight. Don't get into too much trouble. And I meant it. Jessie looked nice. Just because she hated me didn't mean I had to hate her back. The girls gawked, open-mouthed as Hannah and I passed. When we were out of earshot, I turned to Hannah. I'm meeting up with Isaac in the parking lot. We're heading out. Hannah hugged me and said, "Ew. Fun. I'm going to stay here with Evan." I left the building with a bounce in my step and the lyrics to A Little Fall of Rain running through my mind. I strolled down the sidewalk, and as I neared the corner, I heard a female voice coming from the other side of a holly bush. Did you see Destiny getting cozy with Isaac tonight? Sid, I'm not worried about it. It was Aspen talking to Sydney Carter, one of the other senior sopranos in Primus. He's just playing her. You think so? Oh, I know so. He told me himself. He's playing nice to find dirt on the Mormons. I came around the corner and faced them. Can't you just be happy with Will? Why do you need to spread lies about Isaac? Her eyes widened and then flicked down to the stain. A hint of a smile appeared on her face. What happened to your dress? She asked in a superior tone. I clenched my fists at my sides. Forget the stupid dress. Answer my question. She stared at me with narrowed eyes. I don't care about you and Isaac. Good. Because this is happening, whether or not you like it. I was determined to hang on to Isaac with everything I had left. I was finished with letting stupid girls like Jessie and Aspen get to me. I had enough of my own self-doubt. The last thing I needed was their interference added on top of it. When I climbed into Isaac's truck, he studied my face in the dome light and asked, "Are you okay?" I leaned forward to kiss him, and I didn't care if Aspen could see us in his lit-up truck. After a long kiss, we pulled apart, and I said, "I am now." I can tell, he said with a smile that turned my insides to mush. I love the smell of your truck. Why's that? It smells like you. Your cologne. What do you wear anyway? It's amazing. I nuzzled up close to him. He reached across my lap and opened the glove compartment, pinning my ribs against the seat with his muscled torso. He leaned back with a bottle of Abercrombie and Fitch cologne. I popped the lid off and inhaled. Oh, my heck. It's bottled Isaac. He laughed. Can I spritz this on something and keep it forever? Here, he said, grabbing a gray baseball cap from the dash. You can put some on this. He offered it to me, but I just stared at it. Take it. It's yours. You're going to let me have your hat? But that's your favorite. You wear it all the time. I can't accept this. But you're my favorite girl, so it's all good. My heart had melted a little in my chest. Take that, Aspen. Well, in that case, I changed my mind. I shoved it onto my head, not caring what it did to my fancy hairdo. As we drove by, Aspen stood on the corner, still wearing her tiara. Her eyes followed me wearing Isaac's hat as we drove away. She looked furious, but I didn't care. I turned to Isaac. You know what? I've changed my mind. I refuse to let them ruin my night. Let's go do something fun. You don't want me to take you home? He asked. What about your dress? I don't care. Let's go somewhere. You pick. Isaac grinned. I know the perfect place. But first we need caffeine. I opened my mouth to object, but then I closed it. I wasn't a caffeine drinking kind of girl, but after the night I'd had, maybe Isaac was onto something. Chapter 5, Isaac. I parked in front of the gas station and hopped down from my truck. Whisking to the other side, I opened the door for Destiny. Thank goodness Destiny had agreed to get caffeine with me because I was craving a frozen Coke like crazy, and it had been forever since I'd had one. Destiny smiled down at me, and I took her hand to help her down from the truck. Thanks, Isaac. The stain on her dress was huge. I wriggled out of my suit jacket and offered it to her. She gave me a grateful smile as I helped her into it. Your jacket smells good, she said. It smells like you. Good to know I don't stink. She shook her head and giggled. I don't, that's possible. Oh, believe me, it is. Catch me after a football practice one day, and you'll see what I mean. I locked up the truck and opened the door to the convenience store for Destiny. I'll let you in on a little secret. Besides coffee, which I know you don't drink, the best thing to get here is the frozen Coke. Ever had it? Nope. Destiny chewed her lip. What is it? I asked. Well, it's just, her voice drifted off. You okay? I've never had caffeine. Oh. I can get you an orange juice or something. No, Destiny's voice was firm. After the night I've had tonight, I need some caffeine. I quirked an eyebrow at her. How do you know you need it if you've never had caffeine? She swiped a cup from the stack of large clear cups beneath the frozen drinks. I just do. Why do I feel like I'm corrupting you right now? She rolled her eyes and threw a teasing smile at me. It's only caffeine. If it's only caffeine, then why haven't you had it before? She shrugged, looking so cute in my jacket as it swallowed her whole. I don't know. I guess my parents didn't want hyper kids. They never keep soda in the house, and we don't go out much. And when we do go out, we order water. We filled our cups, and she took a sip. Oh wow. This is fantastic. She took a longer sip and her eyes rolled back a little. Ah. That's like really fantastic. I chuckled. My poor, deprived girlfriend. She smacked my chest with the back of her hand. Dang. That was kind of hot. I'm not deprived. She took another long sip and closed her eyes. I tugged on her hand. Come on. Let's buy these drinks before you have nothing left for me to pay for. She giggled and skipped behind me to the counter. The bored cashier rang us up, and I shoved my card into the reader. I grinned over at Destiny. You got the biggest size, huh? MMHM, she said with her mouth still wrapped around the straw. I pushed open the door, letting the cool night air wash over us, and took a sip of my drink. Where are we going now? Destiny asked. Please don't say you're taking me home. I'm not ready yet. No. I told you I know the perfect place. Ever been to the planetarium? Destiny scrunched up her face in concentration. I think I went once on a field trip in 2nd grade. Well, it's a lot cooler now. Last year, they added a brand new exhibit. I never took you for the nerdy science type of guy. You don't have to be a certain kind of person to love the stars. Destiny slurped the last of her frozen Coke and set the empty cup in the cup holder. I guess not. I've always loved stargazing. Sometimes I climb outside my bedroom window to the roof and watch the stars. I have an awesome view from up there. Destiny sobered. That's cool, Isaac. When we pulled into the parking garage, Destiny unbuckled and crawled across to where I was sitting. She grabbed the back of my neck and kissed me. I pulled away from her and looked into her vibrant eyes. Well, hello there. Hey. Her face split open in a wide smile. I should buy you frozen Coke more often. She giggled and sat back on her knees, bouncing on her seat. Let's go look at fake stars now, okay? I chuckled at her. Okay. She wrapped my suit coat around her and jumped down from the truck before I could even make it around to open her door for her. By the time I got to her side of the truck, she was ready to wiggle out of her skin. She still had on my hat, but it was turned to the side and her curls tumbled out from beneath it. She was so adorable I didn't know what to do with her. There was such a sweet, childlike innocence about her that appealed to me in a way that caught me off guard. I took her hand, and we walked together into the crowded building. We got in line at the ticket counter, and Destiny looked around in wonder at the space displays while I bought our tickets. The final showing started in 2 minutes. We wandered through the crowd, and Destiny lifted the front of her skirt as she walked up the stairs in her heels. I offered her my arm, and she wove hers through mine. We looked ridiculous compared to the surrounding people, both of us in formal wear with Destiny sort of hiding a giant red stain on her dress with my suit jacket, wearing my ratty baseball cap. But the moment was perfect, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I was falling for this girl, hard. We settled into our seats, and Destiny put her head on my shoulder as the show started up. Countless tiny white lights appeared on the domed ceiling above us, and an announcer taught us about various constellations and random space facts. Destiny whispered throughout the show, commenting on how cool everything was. Someone behind us shushed her, and she stopped a little, but I could tell she was about to bounce right out of her seat. When the show ended, and the room lit, I stretched and turned to her. I think you need to go run a marathon. Destiny crossed her arm in mock offense, but the sleeves of my jacket were swallowing her hands, and I had to fight to keep from laughing at the image. Are you trying to say I'm too energetic or something? I held up my hands in defense. No, not too energetic. I just think you could benefit from some exercise tonight. She punched me in the arm. I'll show you some exercise. Ow. I rubbed my arm where she'd hit me. You can pack some strength into your blow. She tossed me a sassy look. Let that be a warning to you then. I screwed up my face in mock pain. I don't know what I did to deserve this kind of treatment. No more caffeine for you, young lady. She stepped toward a display of Mars. Whatever. You know you like it. Where is this coming from? You're full of nonsense tonight. She straightened my cap over her curls as she examined a write-up about space exploration. I'm always like this. You just have to get to know me. I stepped closer to her and murmured in her ear. I like that idea. She turned toward me until our noses touched. What? I want to get to know you, Destiny. Her breath quickened against my lips as she looked into my eyes. Okay. You should do that. Unable to hold back any longer, I closed the inch between our mouths and kissed her soft, full lips. A bolt of energy ran through me, and I pulled away. I took her hand and led her to the rest of the museum. The longer I watched the wonder and amazement on her face at the various displays, the fuller my heart felt. By the time the museum announced that they were closing, I was about to burst with happiness. As Destiny and I left the front of the building to walk around to the parking garage, I grabbed her and spun her around into a dip, her hair dangling down to the ground. I kissed her and brought her back up. I turned to the empty street corner and yelled. Hey everyone, this is my girlfriend, and no one can stop us. Destiny giggled, wrapping her arms around my neck and kissing me again. She pulled away and laughed against my mouth. I pulled her back in for one more kiss. Chapter 6, Destiny. When we arrived at my house, Isaac put the truck in park. He pulled me toward him and kissed me, his lips gentle. I leaned away. I'll see you on Monday. I reached to open the door, but Isaac said, wait. Can I go to church with you tomorrow? I quirked an eyebrow. You want to go to church with me? That's okay, right? Oh, my gosh. Of course, it's okay. I leaned in and kissed him hard, emotion rippling through my consciousness. That would be so amazing. I filled him in on the details of when and where, said goodnight, and practically floated my way back to the house. When I got to the front porch, I slipped Isaac's hat into the folds of my dress. Hopefully, I could sneak in unnoticed, stash it, and change into my pajamas before anyone noticed the gigantic stain on my dress. The less I said about my night, the better. I took one last deep breath and savored the crisp, autumn night air. But when I opened the front door, the pleasantness sucked away like a vacuum. Mom and Dad sat on the couch in the formal living room and both stood when I appeared. "Come in and sit down," Dad said in an even, but strained tone, like he was fighting to keep control. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he'd been raking his fingers through his hair, something he frequently did when he was stressed. "Oh, I'm so busted." My belly filled with dread, but I pushed against it in irritation. I'd made my choice, and I'd done it knowingly. My pushing did no good though. The dread was there to stay. I stepped into the room, chin up, and sat gingerly in the chair next to the piano, to face them head on. "We got a call from Michael tonight. He's concerned about you. He told us you were glued to Isaac's side all night, and before the night was over, you both disappeared. When he tried calling you, Olivia found the phone ringing in your bedroom. You've been missing for hours. Do you have any idea what went through my mind? What do you want me to say?" My mental wall of defense was thick and strong. "I want you to tell us where you were and who you were with," he said. "What Michael told you was true." "I was with Isaac. We went to the planetarium. He's my best friend's cousin, and he's my friend." "Is that a crime?" "No," Mom said. "We wouldn't be that worried about you spending time with Isaac if you really were just friends. Michael's come to me several times trying to warn me, but I knew better. I'd seen you with Isaac. Your friendship seemed innocent enough." "Gosh, Mom. You make it sound like I'm sleeping with him." Dad's eyes popped out in terror. Why couldn't I keep my mouth shut? "You aren't, are you?" "Of course not. How can you even ask that?" I gripped the arms of the chair with so much strength it was a wonder I didn't leave indentations in the wood. "Ben, calm down, you're not helping." Mom turned her gaze back to me. "What bothered me was when Olivia brought me your phone and told me what she'd found on there." "Oh no. No, no, no." I usually deleted all our texts, but had forgotten in my rush to get ready for homecoming. He'd said he couldn't wait to put his arms around me again. And oh, the one where he'd told me that the inside of my mouth tasted like raspberries. They would ground me for the rest of the school year, and maybe even longer. My life was officially over. "I'm concerned that you're getting too serious, too soon with this boy." "You're still very young," Mom said. Dad leaned forward like he was about to let forth a string of angry words, but Mom placed a hand on his chest, and he relaxed with great effort. "What is that you're holding?" Mom asked. "Is that a hat? And what happened to your dress?" I ignored the hat question. "Someone spilled their drink on me. I'm sure if we soak it, the stain will come out. I'm really sorry. That was why I came home early." Michael was too busy getting crowned homecoming king to notice his sister was being publicly humiliated. Tears formed in my eyes. "Michael's the homecoming king?" Mom asked. "Yeah, he didn't tell you when he called?" "Called to ruin my life," was what I was thinking, but I wasn't stupid enough to say it. "No, apparently, he was too worried about you to even mention it." I frowned. I hadn't even congratulated him. I could have at least told him Isaac was giving me a ride home. He probably would have understood. I was just so upset I didn't think about it. "Destiny, you're not getting away with diverting the attention off yourself that easily," Dad said. "This thing going on between you and Isaac needs to stop." "Why?" I hated the desperation creeping into my voice. "Because you know the rules in our household." "That's it." I screamed. I can't stand any more of this conversation. I've had punch spilled on me and been attacked by 2 different girls at school tonight, and I refuse to be yelled at by my family. I stood up and headed to the doorway. Behind me, I heard Mom say in a steady voice, "Ben, let her go. Saying anything else will only make things worse." I went into my room and shut the door. Olivia flicked on the lamp and sat straight up in bed. "Why didn't you tell me you were dating Isaac?" Her eyes were full of hurt. I blew out an exhausted breath. "Because I knew you wouldn't understand. I thought the plan was to make Preston your boyfriend." "What happened?" "Isaac happened." "Yeah, I know, Miss Raspberry Mouth. Why did you show those messages to Mom and Dad? You've gotten me in so much trouble tonight." "I told on you for your own good," Olivia said. "You shouldn't be dating a Baptist boy. You know better. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." "Oh, yes, I do. Believe me, I understand. I go to Bethel, too. Don't you think I have crushes on guys? What about the time Keegan asked me to be his girlfriend last year, and I had to tell him no? Do you know how hard that was? I'd liked him all year long." I sat on my bed without a word and changed into my pajamas as she continued with her tirade. "I know Isaac is hot. Everyone knows that, but should you throw away everything just for him?" "I'm not throwing away anything. You don't even know what you're talking about," I shot back. "This is my life. These are my choices. The last time I checked, this was a free country." "Yes, but there are always consequences for your actions. Everything you do comes back to you somehow. Don't give me that garbage. You're not perfect either. That boy will hurt you. I can feel it." "Whatever. I know what I'm getting into." Did I? Did I really know what I was getting into? Footsteps came down the hall, and a knock sounded on my door. "Come in," I said. It was Michael. "Hey." He sat in my desk chair. "Hey," I said. "Congratulations on homecoming king. I was excited for you. Sorry I didn't tell you that before." "That's okay. I saw what Jesse did to you." "You did?" "I guess it was hard to miss." He smiled softly, but it held a touch of sadness. "So, you and Isaac, huh?" "Yep." I studied the pink plaid of my pajama bottoms. "I really wish you hadn't called Mom and Dad." "Why did you do that?" "I was worried about you. Jesse attacked you, and then you disappeared. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I tried calling, and when you didn't answer, I freaked out." Michael rubbed the back of his head. "I don't know how I feel about Isaac dating you. I guess my protective side came out. I was fine. Isaac took good care of me. You don't need to worry." "I do worry. I know what goes on inside a guy's mind. I keep imagining him with his hands on you, and it makes me want to beat my fist into the wall." I blushed. I'd have to make sure not to kiss Isaac in front of Michael. Wait a second. What was I thinking? I couldn't let Michael dictate my love life. I turned to Michael. "I know you're only concerned for my welfare, and I appreciate that. But, you're going to have to get over it. I mean that in the most loving way possible." "Yeah, real loving," Olivia said. "The only thing you love right now is your own lust." "Whatever, Olivia," I said. "I'm sensing jealousy coming from your side of the room." "Shut up," she said. "You need to stop and think about what you're doing. Seriously, think about it. What path are you headed down?" Michael said. "Relax. I'm not headed down some big scary path of evil. It's not like we're getting married. He's my boyfriend. I'd appreciate it if you could at least pretend to be happy for me." He let out a long breath of air. "I'm going to bed. I can tell you're not going to listen to me." He shut the door softly behind him. I grabbed my phone from my desk and scowled at Olivia. "Stay away from my phone from now on. Everything I did was for your own good. Then I'll have to send texts to random people with your phone to teach you a lesson for your own good." Olivia shrugged. "That would be a mean thing to do, if you knew my password." Why do you have a password on your phone? Like I want you knowing everything Brinley and I talk about. I rolled my eyes. I really have better things to do than to read your conversations with Brinley. My phone buzzed in my hands. Oh look. It's my boyfriend. Olivia stared at the screen of her phone with a bitter look on her face. She had a nicer phone than I did. Somehow it had just worked out that way with the rotation of the upgrades. Mom had promised me I'd get a smartphone for my 16th birthday, but they hadn't been able to come up with the money. Instead, I got a few new sweaters and some books. Nice stuff, but not really what I'd wanted. I opened Isaac's text. Isaac, should I meet you at the church tomorrow? We texted back and forth for a while, until I'd filled him in on the details of when and where. Me, so my parents found out about us. Isaac, are they okay with it? Me, not really, but you coming tomorrow will help. Isaac, are you in trouble? Me, I'm not really sure. They got upset, but so far, they haven't really done anything. Olivia's voice interrupted my thoughts. Is lover boy telling you about raspberries again? She made a face. That was gross. It ought to teach you to stay out of other people's phones. If you want to know so badly, he's coming to church with me tomorrow, and he was asking directions. She snapped her mouth closed and raised her brows. He's coming to church tomorrow? No, he wanted the address so he could go toilet paper the place, I teased. Olivia shrugged. He's a Robinson. I wouldn't put it past him. That's not fair. Just because his dad and his brother are jerks doesn't mean he's one, too. I mean, look at us, we're sisters, aren't we? I said with a crooked grin. Olivia pitched a stuffed white kitten at me but missed by a couple feet. I laughed. Nice throw. I climbed into bed and snuggled deep under my covers. Olivia's voice sobered. Do you think Isaac's dad will freak out when he finds out Isaac is going to church with you? I hadn't thought of that. I'd been so excited that he was coming that I hadn't stopped to think about Dr. Robinson's opinion on the matter. I don't know if he will tell him. Olivia turned off the room, and I heard her slip into her bed in the darkness. How can he keep something like that a secret? I don't know. Maybe he's not scared to tell his dad. My stomach clenched at that thought. What if Isaac told his dad like it was no big deal? I had zero doubt that Dr. Robinson would be furious at Isaac. He thought we were part of a cult. Chapter 7, Isaac. Since I'd gone to church with Aspen, her grandpa's church, all summer long, Dad had gotten accustomed to me doing my own thing on Sundays. Thanks to Josh announcing our breakup right after I'd stormed from the house, Dad knew we weren't together, but he didn't realize I'd stopped going to Hillside. He knew I didn't like Bethel. Dr. Green came off pushy for me. I preferred Pastor Gordon's style of preaching. He taught the basics. Love God. Love your neighbor. When Aspen's parents got divorced, her dad continued to go to church at Bethel with his new woman, so when she switched to Hillside, I went with her. Soon, a bunch of other kids started going there, too, making it the hip church. It was nice to get away from our parents breathing down our necks all the time, anyway. Last Sunday, I'd gone back to Bethel, but I couldn't stand it there. I was there 5 days a week. It was too much to attend on Sunday, too. When I turned into the parking lot of Destiny's church, anxiety churned in my stomach. A voice in the back of my head kept warning me I was headed down the slippery slope Dad was always talking about. I ignored it. I was just here to impress Destiny's parents. I looked around for the Clark's Suburban but didn't see it. Reaching into my glove compartment, I gave myself a spritz of my cologne. I double-checked my hair in the rearview mirror and exhaled. Enough stalling. I climbed from the truck, straightened my green-striped tie, and clicked the key fob to lock up. A quick check to my watch revealed that I was 15 minutes early. Maybe Destiny hadn't arrived yet. I opened the glass doors and stepped into the building. Isaac? I swung my head to see who'd called my name. Preston sat on a floral couch next to the entrance. I clenched a fist. He stood up and approached me, smiling. He decided to be nice to me now? How's it going? He asked. Good, I said. I have to admit, I'm surprised to see you here, Preston said. I shrugged. You know. I'm just trying to get to know Destiny better. A stormy look crossed his features for a half second before he composed himself again. Isaac, you made it. I glanced over my shoulder. Oh Destiny, there you are. She looked pretty in a dark green dress with her hair long and straight. I'm sorry about last night, I whispered. It was horrible, she said. What happened? Preston asked. Let's just say there was drama with the family. I'm surprised you haven't already heard all about it from Michael, Destiny said. What are you talking about? Preston asked, looking between us with suspicion. Destiny shifted her eyes between me and Preston and hesitated. She let out a breath. My family is having a difficult time dealing with us, she said, showing the two of us. What? Preston asked. Are you guys together or something? I gave her a slight nod. Preston deserved to know. She looked back at him. Yes. We are. He looked away with a sour, downward curve to his mouth. He ran a hand through his hair and said, well, I'd better get in there. He waved a thumb at the sanctuary, which seemed to get fuller by the second. Destiny grabbed my arm. Come on, she said. We'd better make sure my family saved a seat for you. They know I'm coming, right? Only Olivia does. Why didn't you tell them? I didn't know how they'd react. A lot of stares followed me as we walked into the room. Some older women twisted their heads to see us better as we walked away from them. One of them leaned over to her friend and said something about Bishop's daughter. Bishop was what Preston had called Mr. Clark. Did that mean he was the pastor? I knew about the deep doctrinal parts of Mormonism, but I didn't know much of anything about bishops. I scanned the room and saw him sitting up front. What had he told Destiny last night about me? That I was bad news? That she needed to stay away? I followed Destiny to the end of the pew where her mom sat with Olivia, Elijah, and Brianna. Mrs. Clark waved with a welcoming smile. Destiny sat next to Olivia, and I sat on the end. Michael and Preston sat at the front of the room, behind a counter with a white tablecloth covering several trays. They were helping with the communion table? It annoyed me to see them sitting up there looking all official. A family with 5 kids sat in the pew in front of us. There were 3 daughters and blonde-haired identical twin boys who looked to be about 8 or 9. I smiled at the boys wrestling over a stuffed lion. The oldest daughter, who had light brown hair, saw me and stared with shocked recognition. She nudged her little sister, a thin girl with blonde hair who looked to be around middle school age. The blonde sister took one look at me with Destiny, and her eyes got huge. She whirled back around, and the 2 girls sat with their heads touching, whispering. The dad, a guy with brown hair combed to the side and a slight cleft in his chin, turned around. He smiled and extended a hand over the pew. Hi there. I'm Brother Nelson. I shook his hand. Isaac. So are you here visiting with Destiny? Yes, sir. Is this your first time to visit an LDS church? Yes. Well, it's great to have you. Thanks. You have a nice family, I said. Well, this is most of them. Our son Preston is sitting with Michael. My brow arched. His face did kind of look like Preston's. Isaac and Preston have played paintball before, Mrs. Clark said, leaning toward us to join in the conversation. Oh, is that so? That's great. I didn't realize you guys were friends. I wouldn't put it that way. We've known Isaac for years, she said. He and Michael were friends way back when they were babies in the church nursery at Bethel. If you stick around, you'll see more of me. I'm the young men's president. That means I'm in charge of the boys from 12 to 18. I have a question, I said. Sure. He hung his elbow over the back of the pew. What are Preston and Michael doing up at the front? In our church, the young men have the responsibility of blessing and passing the sacrament. They start at 12 with passing the bread and water to the congregation. When they're 14 and 15, they prepare the bread and water and clean up afterward. Once they turn 16, they break the bread and bless the bread and water. Interesting. The oldest daughter turned around and said, "You're Hannah's cousin, right?" Yeah. She's so cool. We were in the choir at Acorn Creek last year. You must be Megan. She looked a little surprised. Yeah. How did you know? I've heard about you. Her mouth twitched. I've heard about you, too. She smiled to herself like she'd just said something hilarious. I kept expecting Mr. Clark to come over to me and say hi, but every time I caught his eye, he scowled at me. Getting him to like me would be much harder than I thought. 3 hours later, I stood outside the bathroom waiting for Destiny. 2 women with toddlers passed me and went into the ladies' room. I smiled and nodded, but neither of them would meet my eye. Preston's sister Megan walked up to me with a shy smile and a wave. Hey, how are you? I shrugged. I'm okay, I guess. Is this weird for you? She asked. A little. There were some differences, like the 12-year-old boys passing out the bread and water. That was weird. But overall, it was a lot more normal than I'd expected. The way Dad talked, you'd think they still performed animal sacrifices here. Voices from the bathroom carried out to the hall. Did you see that guy the bishop's daughter brought with her? I heard from Sister Brown that he's her boyfriend from the Baptist school. Can you believe it? She's the last girl I'd expect to date a non-member. Well, that, too, but I was referring to how good-looking he was. I mean, attractive. You don't just see guys like that walking around often. Carrie. You're a married woman, and you're twice his age. Yeah, but it doesn't mean I'm blind. I glanced back at Megan. She covered a laugh with her hand. Those ladies had made my day. It was a little gross, but still flattering. They walked out, chatting until they saw me standing there, leaning against the wall. They both averted their eyes and shuffled down the hall. Destiny came out then, her face ashen. Are you okay? Megan asked. We heard what they said. She put on a brave smile. Yeah, I'm fine. Chapter 8, Destiny. After facing my family and not backing down, and then surviving Isaac sitting with me in church in front of the whole congregation, I decided I could face the school about our relationship. People would talk. It was pretty much unavoidable. Like the ladies in the bathroom. I met Isaac in the parking lot that morning. Good morning, beautiful. Hand it off, he said with a gorgeous smile. Huh? I wasn't sure I could ever get used to the idea that Isaac found me beautiful. It seemed so strange. Give me your bag. I won't be seen in school letting my girlfriend carry her own books. I laughed and passed him my backpack. He swung it over his shoulder and put his free arm around me. Aspen's Mustang pulled into her usual spot, and she glared at us as we passed. Getting evil looks from Aspen seemed to be a reoccurring incident. Later that day, Isaac snuck a kiss behind my locker door, even though we weren't allowed to kiss at school. Aspen walked by, and I heard her loud gasp. At lunch, when Isaac touched my hair, she walked past, and her mouth dropped open. She headed over to Will and sat, staring at us from their table. Isaac followed my gaze and murmured into my ear. You don't need to worry about her. I wanted to believe him, but dread filled the pit of my stomach every time I saw her watching us. During Primus, Isaac made Josh switch seats with him so he could sit next to me. He put his arm around me, and I snuggled into him, but then I looked up to see Aspen giving me another death stare from across the room. I said nothing to Isaac, and this time he didn't seem to notice. Michael was on the stage most of the time performing his Jean Valjean parts with Willis Javert. While they were duking it out on stage, Isaac and I spent most of the class period hanging out backstage flirting and joking around, dodging the dirty looks that Aspen kept shooting in our direction. "Marius, isn't it a little rotten to cheat on Cosette with Eponine?" Jessie Larson asked. Isaac rolled his eyes at her. "You're making this musical too literal." I studied the carpet beneath my feet with a smile. I didn't know anything about taking the musical too seriously. Mr. Bird was the one who made it too literal. Just look at how he cast everyone. Will is Javert the self-righteous jerk, Aspen is Cosette, the spoiled brat, Destiny is Eponine the dirty street rat, Sydney's the raunchy hotel owner's wife, Hudson is Enjolras, the sexy rebel, Michael is Jean Valjean, the misunderstood convict, and Isaac is Marius, the sought-after hot guy. Oh, and don't forget Hannah, who's Fantine the prostitute. "Is that necessary, Jessie?" Isaac asked. "Jessie, you're just bitter you don't have a part," Sydney Carter said. Jessie pretended she didn't hear and moved on to another group to complain. "She makes me crazy," I said. "I know," Isaac said. "Don't think about her. Let's plan the next time I can see you outside of school instead." For the next 2 weeks, whenever Isaac didn't have football, we met at Hannah's house after school. Isaac kept serenading me with his guitar. Every time he came over, he had a new song written for me. Since Mrs. Miller thought I was Baptist, she was supportive of our relationship. Lucas knew everything, including the drama around our religions, but he was as supportive as Hannah and kept our secret. During those blissful 2 weeks, the 5 of became close. We consumed more Pop-Tarts than was recommended, avoided our homework, and sang Les Mis until Mrs. Miller suggested we try singing songs from another musical. Lucas turned out to be an excellent singer. It wasn't surprising, considering how musical his family was. Being Isaac's girlfriend was everything I'd hoped and dreamed it would be. He was tender and kind, the perfect gentleman. That blissful period couldn't last though. The breaking point happened on a Tuesday evening. We were sitting on the leather sectional in Hannah's family room. Hannah and Evan were sitting in the kitchen poring over her geometry homework, and Lucas was in his room. Mrs. Miller had just run to the store to pick up a few last-minute items for dinner. Isaac lounged with his head on a throw pillow in my lap, his laptop propped between his knees and chest. He filled out college applications while I ran my fingers through his beautiful, dark hair. He looked up at me and sighed. "That feels amazing, you know that, right?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Isaac wiggled to get up, but I said, "I'll get it. You keep working on your applications." I opened the massive mahogany door, and my mouth dropped open. On the front porch stood the same 2 missionaries my family had just had over for dinner the night before. "Destiny? We weren't expecting to see you here." "Hey, I was about to say the same thing to you." "Did Isaac call them?" "Hannah? We're just out tracting, knocking on doors, you know, the usual missionary stuff," Elder Benson said. He was an all-American-looking guy, with bright blue eyes, and close-cropped blonde hair. I knew from talking to him last night he'd only been on his mission since June, which meant he was only a few months older than Isaac. Isaac appeared behind me. "Who are your friends, Destiny?" Elder Benson showed off his genuine smile and extended a hand to Isaac. "Hey there. I'm Elder Benson, and this is Elder Whitefield. We're missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints." He shook their hands and grinned. "Elder, huh? Oh, it's just a title we get when we're on our mission," Elder Whitefield explained. He was dark-haired, tall, and had hazel eyes. He'd been over to my house many times before since he'd been assigned to my area for the past 3 months. "So you guys are missionaries from Destiny's Church?" "Yes, that's right," Elder Whitefield answered. Hannah and Evan came in from the kitchen. "Who's at the door?" The elders introduced themselves, and she beamed. "Whose house is this?" Elder Whitefield asked. "It's mine." I'm Hannah. This is my boyfriend, Evan, and my cousin Isaac, who is dating Destiny. Oh, she just had to add that part in, didn't she? Are your parents home? No, my mom's out grocery shopping, but she should be back soon. All right. We just wanted to share a message about the gospel of Jesus Christ with you and your parents. When's a good time for us to come back to talk to them? Elder Benson asked. Well, I don't know, Hannah said. That's okay. No pressure. Here's our number if you decide you'd like to set up an appointment with us. He handed her a pass-along card with a picture with Jesus on one side and their phone number written on the other side. Before you guys go, Isaac said, I have some questions. I've studied your beliefs for years, but I'd like to hear more about it from you. The elders nodded, but I sensed uneasiness in Elder Benson's eyes. Isaac's been to church with me once, I said. Oh, really? Elder Whitefield said. He relaxed. Okay. He stood on the porch, gripping the straps of his backpack as he explained the basics of our beliefs, starting with God and an overview of the events in the Bible. It was all the same stuff they had taught me at Bethel, and Isaac nodded in understanding. Then they explained that the fullness of the gospel was taken from the earth. What do you mean by fullness of the gospel? Isaac asked. They mean the power to baptize and to bless the bread and water for the sacrament, I explained. He nodded, and they continued. They explained how the restoration of the fullness of the gospel came about with Joseph Smith and the translation of the Book of Mormon in the early 1800s. I studied Isaac's face. He was respectful to the missionaries, and he seemed intrigued by what they had to say. But when they asked him if he'd like a copy of the Book of Mormon, he shook his head. I can borrow one from Destiny. I'll take one, Hannah said. My head snapped up. She would? Why had I never given her one? Man, I was such a bad missionary. Isaac's brow furrowed. Elder Benson unzipped his backpack, pulled out a new copy of the Book of Mormon, and handed it to Hannah. She flipped through the pages. This is awesome. Now I have my own. Hannah, will you commit to read the Book of Mormon and pray to see if it's true? Elder Benson asked. A muscle twitched in Isaac's jaw as he watched her clutching it. She nodded. I probably won't read all of it, but I can read some and pray about it. Hannah, Isaac started. A car pulled into the driveway. Hannah's mom stepped out of her car with a Louis Vuitton purse slung over her shoulder. Oh, I didn't realize we had guests. Hi. I'm Bethany Miller. She walked up the sidewalk and shook Elder Whitefield's outstretched hand. As her eyes lit on his name tag, she dropped her hand. What's going on here? She looked around in confusion. I just imagined her thinking, who invited the Mormons? Her eyes fell on her daughter clutching her brand new copy of the Book of Mormon, and her face twisted in shock and revulsion. You'd think she'd caught Hannah posing for a porn magazine the way she was looking at her. Why is my daughter holding that book? Silence hung in the air. Someone needs to explain what's going on, or I will call parents. Great. I'm sorry, ma'am. If we'd realized, Elder Whitefield started. You boys had better go home, she snapped. She walked to Hannah and ripped the book from her hands as Elder Benson walked past. And you might as well take this book with you, too. We don't keep this kind of garbage in our house. Elder Benson slipped it back into his bag with a solemn expression on his face. The elders retreated across the sidewalk and down the driveway. Once they were out of earshot, Hannah hissed, Mom, that was horrible and rude. How could you? Do you even realize you insulted my best friend? What's that supposed to mean, Hannah? Are you telling me Destiny's a Mormon or something? Yeah, Mom. That's what I'm telling you. Where have you been? Not where I should have been, which is right beside you at all times. Instead, I've been in that prison of an office working night and day to give you the life you have. No, Mom. You don't do that for me. You do it for yourself. You've put work first for as long as I can remember, and Dad's no better. Destiny's over here all the time, and she's never even met him. Evan touched Hannah on the arm. Hey, maybe you should calm down a little. She looked at Evan and then looked to me. I'm sorry. She had nothing to apologize for. Mrs. Miller looked at me, her eyes flashing with fury. You've been lying to me, and I don't appreciate it. She shook a finger at Isaac. Does your dad know you're dating her? Isaac stared back at her with a challenge in his eyes, but didn't answer her. I didn't think so. Just wait until I talk to him. It won't be pretty. Isaac looked her straight in the eye. Go right ahead. I have nothing to hide. Destiny, grab your stuff. I'm taking you home. My dad was supposed to pick me up on his way home from work, but he wasn't due for another hour. Hot tears burned in my eyes as I went to the couch, scooped up my backpack, and slid my geometry book back inside it. I couldn't decide which hurt worse, Mrs. Miller's prejudice or Isaac's refusal to take the Book of Mormon from the missionaries. Isaac put his hand on the small of my back as we left through the Miller's elegant foyer. As we crossed to his truck, he said, Well, that was no fun. You think? I'd hoped Hannah's mom would be more tolerant than Dr. Robinson. Guess I was wrong. Did you know she'd react like that? I clicked on my seat belt. I had a small suspicion, but I thought since she was a lot more lax about stuff than my dad, she'd be cool about it. With the way she banished Hannah from public school, I should have known. She banished Hannah from public school? She told me she switched to Bethel for the music program. He pulled out of the driveway and continued down the street. Oh. I thought you already knew, or I wouldn't have said anything. What did she do at Acorn Creek? I probably shouldn't be telling you this. You don't have to. It's too late now. If I don't tell you, you'll just assume it's something much worse. I nodded. Good point. Hannah made friends with the wrong crowd. Rumors started going around about her at school, and the next thing she knew, no one wanted to be her friend. Except for this one guy. His name was Colin. He encouraged her rebellious streak. It led to an issue where she butted heads with the assistant principal in this massive power struggle. She and Colin started a strike, and as a result, half the school ended up on the football field during school hours for a massive dance party. She started that? Preston told me about it last year. He said he was glad he didn't go out there because a bunch of kids ended up getting suspended from it. That's why I'm surprised you didn't know it involved Hannah, since you knew people from that school. They never said anything, but Hannah tried to go for Preston and he rejected her. Do you think that was why? No, I think Preston already had it bad for you. Anyway, wouldn't he be the type to only date Mormons? I know Michael's like that. I was speechless for a moment. Isaac was more perceptive than I gave him credit for. You probably don't think I'm a very good Mormon. Why do you say that? Because I'm dating you. Isaac's mouth formed a hard line. I don't care if you're a good Mormon. I like you for you. It was sweet of him to say so, but guilt still sunk into the bottom of my gut. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I don't understand the whole I only date Mormons thing. It comes down to this, I explained with a heavy heart. We believe we can't reach the highest level in heaven unless we're married in the temple. Then when kids are born, they're automatically sealed to their parents, and the entire family can be together for all eternity. Families are a huge thing for us. When my parents first talked to the missionaries 7 years ago, that was what changed things for them. So now, they're always saying you marry who you date. So that's why your parents are so upset about you dating me? Yes. And now your dad will find out, and I imagine it will be much worse for you than it was for me. When I think about him telling me, I can't have you, it only makes me want you so much more. You're Destiny Clark, the most beautiful, most forbidden girl at Bethel Baptist Academy. Who could resist that? Was that how he saw me? Okay, I'll admit to being the most forbidden girl at school, but I think you need to get your eyes checked. I'm hardly the most beautiful. Have you looked in the mirror? You're hot. You sing. You cook. You don't mind getting dirty if it means you're having fun. I don't know what else a guy could ask for. How about someone who wouldn't get him thrown out of the house? Chapter 9, Isaac. I inched my truck up the Clark's tree-lined driveway. Although I'd put up a confident front to Destiny, my chest ached with dread. I would do everything possible to keep us together. Dad had to understand. I'd make him. When I wound the bend in the long drive and the house came into view, it was deserted outside. She disconnected her seat belt and gathered her backpack from the floor. She opened the door, ready to go, but I reached out and patted her arm. Hey! Wait. She spun back to me with bright blue eyes. I would do everything I could to keep her by my side. Would she be strong enough to stay with me? I promise we'll pull through this, I told her. No matter what happens with my dad, I'll stand by you. Destiny reached a hand to my face. That means so much. She was so beautiful, inside and out. I bent my head and kissed her. All too soon, she pulled away. I'd better go inside before someone sees me. As much as I didn't want her to go, I nodded. I watched until she disappeared from view. Shifting my truck into drive, I left her house, dreading every mile that brought me closer to home. I pushed open the front door and stepped inside. Other than the ticking of the grandfather clock in the foyer, the house was quiet. I crept up the stairs to my room unnoticed. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I pulled out my phone to text Destiny to make sure everything was okay. She replied, letting me know Hannah's mom had called, and her parents were furious that she'd been sneaking around again. We texted back and forth for the next 5 minutes. If Aunt Bethany had called the Clarks, she'd probably already called Dad, too, right? My bedroom door opened. Dad came in, wearing a red polo with the Bethel Bears mascot embroidered on the left breast. I just got off the phone with your Aunt Bethany. We had a long conversation about you. Please tell me you're not dating that Mormon. I told her she was mistaken, that my son would never do such a thing. I met his gaze. She's not mistaken. I was afraid you'd say that. Dad, she's an amazing girl. You just need to take the time to get to know her better. She's got you brainwashed. She's enticed you so strongly, she's convinced you to use your Aunt Bethany's house to meet with Mormon missionaries. That was only today, and it was a coincidence. Okay, so it was only once. Does it matter? Bethany came home, and Hannah was holding a Book of Mormon. I can't even imagine how horrible that must have been for her. I didn't like it much either, I admitted. It was one thing for me to go check out Destiny's church to impress her parents, but a different thing altogether for Hannah to study that stuff. I knew what I was getting into. My faith was firm. Hannah's was still so shaky. But you stood there and allowed it. You've been so blinded by this girl, it's affecting your ability to make good decisions. She's not blinding me. I know what I'm doing. No, Isaac, you don't. Didn't I just warn you to be careful around her only 2 months ago? This is why. Do you understand how convincing they can be? Look what happened to Ben Clark. He was one of our best members. A deacon even. If they could get to him, they can get to you, and he didn't have a girl to convince him to join. She may have the face of an angel, but they have indoctrinated her right along with the rest of her family. She's in Satan's clutches. Was she? At one time I'd believed that, but after going to Destiny's church, I just didn't feel the same way about it anymore. Satan is the great deceiver, Dad continued. There's nothing he'd like better than to see you lose your salvation. He'll use every tactic he can to drag you down to hell, no matter how innocent it may seem at first. Don't you think I'm stronger than that? I've studied the Bible daily as long as I can remember. I know it backward and forward. I have a personal relationship with God. He walks with me every day. Nothing Destiny could say would drive me to lose that. Not that she would. She'd always been respectful of my beliefs. I'm glad to hear that. But you need to break it off with her. Keep it kind, but make it clear that it's over. No. He stared at me, his jaw agape. Listen to me. His face shifted from incredulity to dominance. Once, that expression might have scared me, but now it only encouraged me to cling harder to my position. I forbid you to see her again. I looked at his red face and said calmly, even you can't do that. I go to school with her. We have Les Mis rehearsals coming up. I shrugged. You're just going to have to get used to the idea that we're together, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. You will not disrespect me, he bellowed. There's plenty I can do to keep you away from her. He stepped closer to me and thrust out his hand, palm up. Break up with her, or hand over the keys to your truck. I winced. Not my baby. Oh well. Destiny was beyond worth it. I shrugged and scooped the keys from my bedside table. They're all yours. I tossed them across the room. He caught the key ring with 2 hands and scowled. Now give me your phone. I sighed and fished my brand new iPhone from the fold of the blankets on the bed. I'd waited weeks for the new iPhone to come out and had just gotten it 2 weeks ago. Until you break up with her, your life will be like prison. You can go to school, work, church, and football. Beyond that, you're to be at home either doing homework or helping your mother clean. Whatever, I muttered. Yes, sir. Ugh. Yes, sir. The next morning, Mom drove me to school with Josh like I was a kid again. She almost made me ride with Dad, but he arrived way too early. When I climbed out of the car, I saw Destiny crossing the parking lot with Michael. Destiny looked over at me. Where's your truck? My dad grounded me last night. He took my keys and my phone. Because of me? Destiny asked. I nodded. So that's why you never sent me my goodnight text last night. Or the good morning one, I said with regret. See? I wasn't neglecting you. Isaac, I'm so sorry, she said. This all happened because of me. Are you kidding? Like I'd pick that stuff over you. He can ground me all he wants. He can't force me to break up with you. At least you don't have to hide our relationship from him anymore. It was better when I did. Josh thinks it's hilarious that I'm in so much trouble. And now my mom's starting up about the dangers of Mormons. I shouldn't have said the last part. Destiny looked even more troubled now. I pulled her close until our foreheads touched. I'm so glad I have you. I don't want you to feel like I would ever choose my phone or my truck over you. Her eyes twinkled. What would I do without your smile? I took her hand and interlaced my fingers with hers. We walked toward the building. When we got inside, Aspen and Green were passing out these yellow flyers near her locker. She had a badge I didn't recognize pinned to her red uniform shirt. Why was she organizing school events without talking to me first? An Asian girl with a braid walked past, allowing me a better peek at the badges Aspen was distributing. Save Isaac. What the heck? A freshman with a crew cut and glasses passed me. Hey, can I see that? He gave me a deer-in-the-headlights face, but handed me the yellow paper. At the top was a cross. Save Isaac Prayer Group. What? Come join us in prayer for Isaac Robinson to help him stay strong in God as he's being deceived by the Mormons. Why? To show our support for our dear friend and leader as he goes through this confusing time in his life. When? Every day during lunch. Where? The student lounge. Every prayer helps. If we all join in prayer, we can make a difference. This is ridiculous, Destiny said. I wadded the paper and pushed my way through the crowd, still holding Destiny's hand. As we approached, the group parted. Aspen's eyes met mine and hardened. She looked away and smiled at the surrounding crowd. Raw fury burned inside me. What the heck do you think you're doing? I asked. She smiled and handed another paper out. Just because we aren't together anymore doesn't mean I'm not worried about you, Isaac. You have no right. She smiled sweetly. I have every right. I'm the chaplain. It's my job to help the students grow stronger in their walk with God. My walk with God is going just fine. Stay out of my business and my life. I ripped the papers from her hands and scattered them across the hall. She stepped back, startled, and Green said, "Robinson, you're out of line." "You're going to talk to me about being out of line?" He met my gaze coolly. "Should I tell everyone what good Christians you and Aspen really are?" He looked at me with sympathy. "You really are much further gone than we'd thought, but don't worry." He slammed a yellow paper to my chest. "We'll all be praying for you." I looked down at his fingers splayed across my shirt and then from his smug face to his arm around Aspen. The hypocrisy was too much to take. I curled my hand into a fist and knocked Green in the jaw. Hard. His body slammed into the lockers behind him. Destiny called out my name and held my arm back as Aspen screamed and rushed toward Green. "Baby, are you okay?" Although blood trickled from his mouth, he looked up at me with triumph. "It's okay, Aspen. He's in a dark place. He needs to let God's light back into his life." "Y'all disgust me," I spat. "Destiny," I turned toward her serious blue eyes. "Help me get away from here, before I beat him senseless." She nodded and squeezed my hand as we left the gawking crowd behind us. Chapter 10, Destiny. I glanced at the clock in geometry class for the 100th time that hour. There was only 30 minutes left of last period, and then I could see Isaac for a few minutes before he had to go to football practice. If Mom would let me, I'd just stay on the bleachers and watch him and Michael play while I did my homework. I'd gotten away with it a few times, but now that she knew the real reason behind my sudden interest in football, she'd banned me from it. "Mrs. Smith," a voice called through the intercom. "Yes?" "Could you please send Destiny Clark down to Dr. Robinson's office?" With dread, I gathered my book and papers and shoved them into my backpack. My heart pounded as I walked down the hall. Until lately, I'd been the perfect example of a goody two-shoes rule follower. I'd never dreamed I'd be called into Dr. Robinson's office. When I knocked on the door, Dr. Robinson opened it. Isaac sat in one of the blue plastic chairs facing the desk, a grim expression on his face. My eyes wandered around the room and fell on a large wooden cross above a framed Bible verse that said, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." Romans 3 verse 23 NIV. He circled the desk. "Have a seat." His voice was silk smooth. I sat in the empty chair. "Are we in trouble for something?" I asked. "Not at all. I just felt we needed to open a better channel of communication between the three of us." "Yeah, right." I laced my fingers and placed my hands in my lap to appear calm, but I trembled inside. "This relationship is unhealthy for both of you. The Bible is clear on unequally yoked couples. So you called us in here to tell us to break up?" Isaac fumed. He stood and ran his fingers through his hair. "This is ridiculous." "Sit down." I wasn't finished. Reluctantly, Isaac lowered into the chair. "Since neither of you are being cooperative, I've advised Mr. Bird to release Destiny from her duties in the musical." A loud gasp escaped my lips. "What?" "No." My dreams were shattering around me, and I was helpless to fix it. "That's ridiculous," Isaac challenged, anger contorting his beautiful face. "If you're going to punish someone, pick me instead." My heart warmed at his words. He would do that for me? In fact, I'll step down from being Marius if it means she gets to stay in his Apennine. She's worked so hard. It wouldn't be fair to take it from her. She should have thought of that before she lured in my son. She's sitting right in front of you. You don't have to talk about her like she's not here," Isaac snapped. Dr. Robinson placed both hands on the desk and leaned closer to me. I resisted the urge to shrink away. "Stay away from my son," he demanded in a low, controlled voice that sent fear into the core of my heart. He turned back to Isaac and crossed his arms. "Is that direct enough for you?" Isaac smirked. "Last time I checked the handbook, there was no rule against a Mormon and a Baptist dating. That's because the founders never intended to have Mormons in attendance." I looked him in the eye and spoke, my voice clear, but respectful. "Dr. Robinson, I'm sorry you feel that way. The entire time I've attended your school, I've lived my religion quietly. Even though there's no rule against giving out a Book of Mormon to my friends at school, I never have. If someone comes to me with a question, I don't mind answering it for them, but I don't like cramming my religion down someone else's throat." Dr. Robinson said, "You're missing the point. By dating Isaac, you have pushed your religion on others." "No, I haven't." I didn't add that every time we'd talked about it, Isaac had been the one to bring it up first. "You call inviting missionaries to my sister's house barely talking about religion?" "I didn't invite them. I was surprised to see them, too." "And you expect me to believe that? You Mormons are all the same. You suck our people into your web of lies." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but before I could speak, he bellowed, "I will not have my son involved with you people." "Isaac and I aren't that different," I insisted. "We believe the same stuff. I just believe a few extra things." Dr. Robinson shook his head, but I continued, courage filling my chest as I spoke. "In fact, when my family converted, we kept our old beliefs and added to what we already knew." "I disagree. This isn't something I would normally say to you, but under the circumstances, I feel the need to make my stance on your family's conversion clear." "Okay. You say your family kept your old beliefs. I know for a fact that's false. They brainwashed you. Lies twisted your old beliefs." "How can you say that? How can you tell me what I believe? Don't you realize I understand the differences between our religions by now? They have misled you." "No one misled me." A lump rose in my throat as I recalled a memory close to my heart. When I was in kindergarten, I heard Dr. Green preach about salvation, and I felt the Holy Spirit move upon me so strongly I couldn't stay in my seat when they called us to the front. You may imagine that's too young to understand, but I did. I accepted Christ as my Savior that day, and He's been with me ever since. As I spoke, goosebumps rose on my arms. I still know today, beyond any doubt, that Jesus died for my sins. I know He rose again, and if I dedicate my life to Him and follow Him faithfully, I'll live with Him forever. I knew it then, and I know it now. That part never changed for me. Dr. Robinson shook his head. "I'm sorry, Destiny. You're not a Christian." My jaw fell open. "How can you say that?" I'd spoken the words straight from my heart. I meant them from the bottom of my soul. "You believe in a different Jesus than we do." Stunned, I fell back in my seat. I'd never heard such nonsense before. "What? Last time I checked there was only one Jesus." "Isaac, you don't believe that, do you?" He looked from me to his dad, indecision written on his face. Dr. Robinson lifted his chin, confidence gleaming in his eyes. "We believe in the Trinity. You don't. Therefore, you believe in a different Jesus." "I'm only trying to help you, Destiny. If you stay on this wayward path your parents chose for you, you're doomed to an eternity of misery. I care about you and your family. I just don't want to see that happen. So take this chance, right here, to rededicate your life and come back to us." He didn't get it. My parents didn't choose this path for me. I chose it for myself. Sure, I was young when I converted, but I could have come back to being a Baptist at any time since then. Do you want to know why I haven't? I prayed about it, and I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. So how can I rededicate my life when it's already on the right path? Dr. Robinson's jaw tightened. He lifted a Bible from the corner of the desk. "You say you're on the right path, but yet you believe the Book of Mormon to be God's word. Revelations 22 says, "If anyone adds or takes away from this book, they shall have plagues added to them and the tree of life taken away." That scripture was referring to the book of Revelation. If you'd studied the topic more, you would have realized the Bible hadn't even been canonized yet. You get this information from people who have studied it briefly. If you want to learn about Mormons, ask a Mormon, not someone who's researched a few books and websites written by Baptists or ex-Mormons with a grudge. If I want to learn about Muslims, I wouldn't talk to a Jew or an anti-Semitic skinhead. I'd go to a mosque to talk to the Muslims who've studied it all their lives. The bell rang. I stood up and slipped my backpack onto my shoulders. You have a choice to make, Isaac. You can listen to your dad's lies, or you can pray and research it the right way to find out for yourself. When you figure it out, let me know. Fists clenched, I walked from the room. Chapter 11, Isaac. Destiny, wait. I rushed after her down the hall. Within several long strides, I'd caught up to her and grabbed her arm. Her eyes flashed at me. Students poured from the classrooms and gawked at us. A crowd of freshmen passed us wearing those stupid Save Isaac badges. They stared and began whispering. "He's with her again. Guys, God's in control. Everything happens for a reason. Don't forget what Aspen said, he'll come around. We just have to keep praying and have faith." I pulled her away from them. "We need to talk." She stared back at me for a moment, but then nodded. I led her out the back door to the soccer field and scanned the area. It was deserted. I climbed onto the first row of bleachers. She sat beside me. We stayed there for a moment, and I gazed up into the overcast sky. "I'm not sure I can do this much longer," she whispered. Dread crept into my mind, as gray as the thick blanket of clouds overhead. I should have seen it coming. I should have known. It feels like the entire world is against us, you know? I studied her downturned face, the way her shoulders slumped in defeat. "We can make it work. We knew it would be hard, but I don't regret it. Every second I've spent with you has been worth it." She shook her head. A slow drizzle began to fall. "I keep thinking about how much better your life would be without me." "What?" My voice broke. "Why would you think that?" "Isaac, look at me." She stepped out onto the grass, faced me, and threw her hands outward in the rain. "I'm nothing special. You can have any girl in this school. Why would you pick me? Where are you getting this idea from? You're beautiful." "I'm sorry." She shook her head. "You can't be serious." She looked at me, so many nameless emotions crossing her face. Her bottom lip trembled. "It's for your own good." She walked toward the building as I sat stunned on the bleachers. I sprang up and ran after her. I wrapped her into my arms, buried my hands in her hair, and kissed her. At first, she froze in my embrace, but then she kissed me back, hesitant at first, but her intensity increased until she kissed me with a hunger. I wished I could freeze that moment in time, feeling her against my body, kissing her with the rain streaming down our cheeks. I pulled away and gazed into her bright eyes. "Stay with me, Destiny. I will always stand by you." She stared at me, her blue eyes wavering. "I just need time to figure things out." Her voice faltered, and she pushed away from me. "I'm still here," I called, desperation lancing through my body. "This isn't over." She didn't look back. I stood on the edge of the soccer field, the rain drenching my head and running in rivers down my face. She was leaving me. She really was. I couldn't believe it. I sat on the bleachers and put my head in my hands. My wet shirt stuck to my back. I sat like that for 10 minutes, until the soccer team started showing up. "Hey, Robinson, you okay?" Carlos Rodriguez asked. "Yeah, I'm all right. Have fun with football today. I hear coach is still making you practice in the rain." I trudged off to the locker room to get changed, but for once in my life, I wasn't in the mood to play football. On the way home, I sat in silence in the passenger seat as Dad drove. Rain pounded on the windshield with a vengeance. "Isaac." "What?" I mumbled. "I know you're upset, but I want what's best for you." His voice broke the rhythm of the windshield wipers beating away. "Quit telling me to break up with her. You're wasting your breath." What did it matter now? She'd already given up. I didn't bother telling Dad that, though. The last thing I needed right now was to see the triumph on his face. His meeting with Destiny today had achieved what he'd wanted. It was his fault she left me. I was so furious with him that there was no way I was letting him know he'd won. Why did it have to hurt so much? I was fighting against my blood for her, and she couldn't even stay strong for me. Is she worth your salvation? Why didn't it surprise me that Dad getting all self-righteous? "I'm not giving up my salvation," I snapped. "I'm pretty sure it's still there. You have to break up with her." Dad's voice escalated as the car whipped around a sharp bend in the road, curving left around a deep ravine. "Shut up!" I screamed. "There's nothing wrong with them, Dad. All these years you've told me that Mormons were going to hell. Well, I don't see it anymore. I've been in her home, I've seen how they worship. When this school year started and Hannah became friends with Destiny, I was terrified. I thought Destiny would convert her. So Will and I came up with this plan. I would befriend Destiny and dig up some dirt on the Mormons. I don't know what we expected to find. That they perform secret animal sacrifices in their closets? That the men keep a bunch of extra wives in their basements? I went in Destiny's basement the day we played paintball. Do you know what Bishop Clark has down there? Did I just refer to him as Bishop Clark? I ignored it and continued on when Dad didn't answer. They have a bunch of food. Ooh, scary stuff. The Clarks sure are crazy. They keep food storage in their basement. I threw my hand in the air. Are you following me? I see nothing to be concerned about. His face had grown more hardened with each word I'd spoken. And you know what else? It wasn't necessary to add the next part, but I was so angry I couldn't resist. I went to church with her, too. Dad hit the brakes, and the tire screeched. You what? Dad, you're stopped in the middle of the road. I twisted in my seat. The short stretch of pavement behind us disappeared around the sharp curve we'd just taken. Rain pounded on the windshield. I'm not moving until you swear you'll break it off and never set foot inside a Mormon church again. You're insane. Didn't he see the danger he'd put us in? The storm raged all around us, and the ditch to our right had filled with muddy water, tinted orange from the red clay. To our left, on the other side of the oncoming traffic, was a deep, tree-filled ravine. A dump truck plowed down the hill, coming from the opposite direction. Dad, you need to move the car. The truck whizzed by, splashing a small tidal wave of water on us as it passed. It ran down the windows like a muddy car wash. Just then, water shot forward, coming from behind us as a sudden impact hit the rear of the car. Dad screamed as the car whipped around, swirling water like a whirlpool. We stopped inches from the edge of the ravine. I looked out my window straight into the oncoming traffic. Through the pounding rain, I spotted a set of headlights descending the hill at full speed. Then everything went black. Chapter 12, Destiny. I fiddled with a tube of cake-batter chapstick, popping the lid on and off, staring off into the downpour outside instead of focusing on the homework spread across my desk. Out of habit, I checked my phone to see if I'd gotten any texts from Isaac. Then I remembered, I'd dumped him. The pain seared in my chest, but I knew it was the best thing for us. We were too different. At least he'd get his phone and his truck back now. Within a week, he'd forget me and move on to some other lucky girl. That was what I wanted, right? Wasn't it best for him? The sadness hung over me, thick and miserable. I tortured myself by reliving how he'd pulled me in close, how the rain had made his lips extra slippery as they moved over mine, How his stubble had scratched my chin in a way that made me want more. I shuddered. It didn't help to think about it, but the memory would stay with me forever. It was our last kiss. And we'd had an epic story of forbidden love. Sure, it was over the top, but I felt dramatic. I'd lost everything. My parents were furious with me, Michael could hardly look at me, and Olivia expressed a strange mixture of jealousy and self-righteousness. I'd lost my role as Eponine, so all my hard work was for nothing. I couldn't even walk down the halls at school without people giving me hateful looks and telling me I was going to hell. And today, I'd pushed Isaac away. My phone buzzed. I stared at it, sitting on the corner of my desk. It was a text from Hannah. Something happened to Isaac. Call me. What did she mean? Something happened? Had she found out how much trouble he was in today? The phone rang in my ear. Hello, she choked out. Was she crying? Hannah? What's wrong? Isaac's been hurt, she sobbed. What? How? Panic built up in my chest. I pressed my fists into my forehead. Please, no, no, no. He was in a car accident coming home from school today. How bad is it? I bit my lip. We don't know yet. He's unconscious. They took him in an ambulance to the hospital. My mind traveled down the list of worst-case scenarios. If anything happened to him? I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed harder than I'd ever prayed for anything in my life. Please, Heavenly Father, even if he can't be mine, protect him. Heal him. If he wakes up or if there's any news, text me, even if it's in the middle of the night. I have to go. Tears threatened like an impending thunderstorm. Of course, I will. I ended the call, and sobs shook my body. I climbed into my bed, not even bothering to change out of my school uniform, and curled up under my covers. What if Isaac died, and the last thing I ever said to him was that I was turning my back on our relationship? Either that or he'd have to wake up in pain in a hospital bed with the knowledge that I hadn't been willing to tough it out by his side. My crying slowed to hiccups in the dark room. The door cracked open, and Olivia entered the room. Why are you in bed already? Leave me alone, Livy. Isaac dumped you, didn't he? I heard about the Save Isaac Club. I guess all that praying finally worked. Either that or he got tired of being treated like a reject. That must have been hard for His Royal Highness. I buried my head into my pillow and screamed, "Go away." She ignored me. Instead, she got out her phone and started tapping away. Was she texting Brinley, saying that I'd broken up with Isaac? I rolled to face the wall, but I could still hear her messaging back and forth with someone. I curled my arms around my phone in case Hannah texted me anything. At some point, I drifted off to sleep. When the alarm on my phone went off for seminary, I turned it off and sat up in my rumpled uniform. There were no new texts on my phone. Was he still unconscious? I dragged myself to the shower. What if he was in a coma or ended up with brain damage? He had his whole life ahead of him. As the water pounded my head and down my back, I began to feel a bit better. Once I was dressed, I brushed my hair back into a ponytail and put on lip gloss and mascara. I climbed into Michael's green Honda Civic, and we drove down the driveway. Most days, we chatted on the short drive to seminary, but today, I leaned against the window and closed my eyes. Are you okay? Michael asked. I'm fine. You don't sound fine. Olivia said you were crying last night. He glanced at me, his brows knit in concern. Did Isaac dump you? He asked it gently, but I could hear the underlying hope in his voice. It only made me feel worse. Still, he'd asked nicely, so he deserved a truthful answer. No. Oh, he said in a dull voice. He was in a car accident after school. I had no idea. Is he okay? I don't know, I said, and even to my ears, my voice sounded tiny. When we got into the classroom at the church, I sat by Megan. Preston gave Michael a questioning glance, but Michael only shook his head. Had he already told Preston last night he suspected I'd broken up with Isaac? Preston's mouth formed a hard line. What happened last night? Megan whispered. Brinley said you were upset. There aren't any secrets around here, are there? I asked. Not when you're hurting. What did he do to you? Preston asked. He didn't do anything to me. He's in the hospital unconscious, okay? Preston and Megan sat back in their chairs, with matching stunned expressions. Michael gave Preston an "I told you not to go there" look. I'm sorry, Megan said. She gave me a hug. I hope he's okay. I know you care about him. Thanks. That means a lot, I said. Preston looked away and didn't speak to me for the rest of the morning. Chapter 13, Isaac. A beeping noise like an alarm clock from hell assaulted my ears relentlessly. My eyelids fluttered, and my head throbbed with a massive headache. I opened my eyes, and blurry shapes came into focus. I was in a hospital room. Mom rushed to my side. Stephen, get over here. He's awake. She took my hand and pressed it to her mouth as a sob shook her body. We've been so worried about you. What happened? Hi, my name is Dr. Morris, said a female voice to my left. Wincing, I twisted my sore neck to see a small woman wearing a lab coat. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back into a long ponytail at the base of her neck. I'm afraid you were in a car accident last night. What? I pushed up to a sitting position in the bed and grimaced. My head hurt so badly that the room spun a little. What are my injuries? What time is it now? One thing at a time, she said in an even tone. She checked her watch. It's 2:30 on Thursday afternoon. You have a mild concussion from hitting your head against the side of the car. You should be aware it's normal to experience some temporary memory loss after a head trauma like this. That means I'd been out for almost 24 hours. What's the last thing you can remember? Dad asked, his face tense. I closed my eyes and scrunched my face in concentration. Football. It was pouring rain. I don't even remember getting in the car. Dad relaxed a little. Why did that seem to calm him down? After Dr. Morris left, I said, Dad, get some rest. You don't look so good. His hair was rumpled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He's been so worried about you. He didn't sleep all night, Mom said. Well, at least he wasn't hurt. He was very blessed, Mom said. Start from the beginning, I said. I want to hear the whole story. Dad cleared his throat. We were driving down Acorn Creek Road coming up on the ravine, and the road was flooded over so deep I had to slam on my brakes. The person behind us rear-ended us, causing us to spin into the other lane. A car came down the hill. They tried to swerve, but they still hit the back corner of the side you were on. You were very lucky. If the car hadn't swerved, it would have T-boned us. Either that, or we would have been thrown into the ravine. Let's just say you had some guardian angels watching over you last night, Mom said. Chapter 14, Destiny. Gripping the padded straps of my backpack, I walked down prep hall with a heavy heart. I avoided the vicious stares Aspen and Sydney gave me as I passed. When I turned a corner, I found Hannah standing at her open locker, pulling books out of her backpack. The halls were abuzz with talk of Isaac's accident. There were all kinds of rumors flying around the school. Some people were saying he'd broken an arm. Some said he was in a coma. Some said it was only a mild concussion. Hey. I'm guessing that since you haven't texted me, you haven't heard anything, I said to Hannah. Nothing new, Hannah said, her face solemn. During Primus, we were working on Christmas songs again. I kept glancing past Josh to Isaac's empty seat. I couldn't get him out of my head. Was he going to be okay? Would he be in a lot of pain when he woke up? What were his injuries? As class came to a close and I was putting my folder in its cubby, Mr. Bird said, "Destiny, can I have a word with you?" "Ooh, busted," Josh muttered as he walked past. I followed Mr. Bird into his office. He shut the door and then sat on the edge of his desk. "I understand you're dating Isaac." Isaac and I weren't dating. We were over. The pain was so intense I couldn't even contradict him. All I could do was stare at him, unable to speak. "His father came to me about it yesterday. He made it clear that he disapproved of your relationship. He was so upset about it, he demanded I relieve you from your role as Eponine." Anger lashed through me, intensified by the pain. Our breakup was mostly Dr. Robinson's fault. If it weren't for him and his stupid bigotry, Isaac and I would still be together. "Why?" I said. "What would that accomplish? Taking the role away from me just because I'm dating the headmaster's son would be wrong on so many levels. He can't hold that over your head." Mr. Bird studied me and nodded. "I agree." I let out the breath I'd been holding. "Out of all my students this year, I've seen the most growth in you. You've improved drastically since your audition. But even if that weren't the case, I still wouldn't be changing the cast." "Thank you so much." Mr. Bird's gaze grew solemn. "Be careful though. I've seen a lot of young romances in my years here, and well, I see a lot of opposition to your relationship with Isaac. You two are what you might call star-crossed lovers, to take a line from Shakespeare. You and Isaac are some of my best students, and I'd hate to see you kids getting hurt." I knew all too well about getting hurt. Isaac and I had let our guards down, and where had it gotten us? Tears threatened, and I studied my chipped purple nail polish, straining to control my emotions. Mr. Bird seemed surprised by my sadness. "I don't have a problem with your relationship. More power to you. Call me a silly romantic, but I rather like Marius and Eponine being secretly in love." I gave him a weak smile. He scratched his head. "I have a concern, though." "Yes?" "If this romance doesn't work out, will you still be able to perform as Eponine and Marius?" His words twisted and jabbed inside me. I imagined singing with Isaac on stage, his face only inches from mine, and frowned. It would be hard to be so near him without being his girlfriend. Could I do it? Would the pain be worth it? I thought of the countless hours I'd spent poring over every detail of the musical I could find on the internet. I thought about the countless hours I'd sat at the piano, committing words and notes to memory, until my back ached from sitting too long. I thought about all the voice lessons and the time it had taken to drive across town when I could have been studying or relaxing in the woods. I can't speak for him, but I will do everything in my power to be the best Eponine I can be. No matter how hard it would be to sing with Isaac, performing the music I'd worked so hard to perfect would undoubtedly be worth it, not to mention the chance I still had ahead of me to learn more in the rehearsals to come. I'm glad to hear that. It sounds like we're on the same page. I still can't believe Dr. Robinson tried to get me kicked out of the musical. Honestly, this job isn't worth it to me if it means I have to compromise my integrity, Mr. Bird said. That's not what we're supposed to be standing for at this school. When I accepted this job, I took it because of the values they found Bethel upon. We're here to teach the students about God's love, not spread bigotry and hatred. Mr. Bird's words struck me like a lightning bolt. He was right. No. He was beyond right. What had I been thinking? By breaking up with Isaac, I was enabling Dr. Robinson to practice the bigotry and hatred Mr. Bird had mentioned. When I came out of art with Hudson, he gave me a hug. "I'm sorry about Isaac." His blue eyes were sad and serious. "Thanks, Hudson. Maybe he's okay, right? He's probably just waking up." Josh walked up to us. "Actually, he is. I just got a text from my dad." Dark circles sat under his eyes, and his hair was disheveled. For the first time, the hardened outer shell of cockiness had peeled away, revealing the vulnerable younger brother hidden beneath. How's he doing? I asked. He's in a lot of pain, but he's been talking to our parents. He doesn't remember the wreck. Did he ask for me? Normally, I wouldn't have asked Josh such a question, but I couldn't help myself. The old glint of anger flashed in his eyes. He shook his head. Nope. Hudson and I walked past Josh and turned into the hallway with the choir and band rooms. Aspen and Will were walking up to a group of cheerleaders clustered in prep hall. We're taking donations to get balloons and flowers for Isaac, Aspen said. We're meeting in the student lounge to make get well posters, and then we're all going over there after school to cheer him up. It will be a good way to show him that even though he's been turning his back on God, we're still here cheering him on in his journey to come back. I balled my fists at my sides and resisted the urge to scream at all of them. These were the same people making his life miserable yesterday. Where did Aspen get off thinking she could organize something like this for him? It was like she thought she could step right back into her old role as girlfriend. And there was Will, right beside her, acting like he was still Isaac's best friend. If Aspen and Will showed up, Isaac would only feel worse. I needed to be there by his side to cheer him up, not her. Are you going to make posters with Aspen? Hudson asked with a teasing smile. What do you think? I said with a snort. I'm going to guess no. You guessed right. I realized why Aspen was doing all of this. She was jealous. Of me. She didn't care about Isaac's salvation. Heck, she didn't care about her own. This was all an elaborate plan to break us up. She didn't want him for herself, but she didn't want me to have him either. I remembered seeing the raw pain on his face the day we ate omelets in Hannah's kitchen. He'd poured his heart out to me about how much the breakup had hurt him. It had been his own personal empty chairs at empty tables moment. She had so much power over him to crush his heart. It was part of why I dated him in the first place, to protect him from her. He needed me, and I would do everything I could to be there for him. But would he want me back? Chapter 15, Isaac. News travels fast at Bethel Baptist Academy. At about 6:30, there was a knock on the door to my hospital room. Mom opened it and said, Aspen. Will. It's so good to see you. And you brought some friends. Within seconds, my room was crowded with football players, cheerleaders, Primus singers, all the other student body officers, and a couple of kids I didn't even know. Aspen came into the room with a huge smile and hugged me like we were still dating. I pushed her away. What was her problem? She pretended to not notice. The whole school's been so worried about you. Will cleared his throat, and she stepped back a little. He put his arms around her like he was defending his personal property. He could have her. I was done with her manipulative personality. The group of students stayed on, long after my head had pounded again and I'd dropped several hints I'd wanted them to leave. Most of them weren't even talking to me. They were using my room like a hangout spot. Normally, I joined in on the sports banter and teasing, but my heart was still so heavy from Destiny's last words to me. I kept hoping she'd show up, but she hadn't. Mom and Dad didn't even seem to care about the people overstaying their welcome. At one point, Dad said, "It's good to see you back with your old friends again." I bit back the sarcastic remark, threatening to shoot from my mouth. Dinner came, but I only ended up picking at the soggy meatloaf and limp green beans. Aspen sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Her smell used to be such a turn-on. Now it turned my stomach. Why couldn't she just back off? You shouldn't have to eat that garbage. Come on everyone. Let's go get him some barbecue. Green remained sitting, but she tugged on his hand. No thanks, Aspen. This is fine. Don't be silly. Smoky Bones is just down the street. We'll be back in 10 minutes, 15 tops. Why was she doing this? Didn't she get it? Even if Destiny didn't want to tough it out with me, there was no way I would go back to Aspen. Ever. Her mere presence nauseated me. Whatever. She'd figure it out. In the meantime, why not cash in on some free barbecue? The hospital food was disgusting. When Aspen and Green left with their friends, it was like the entire room had gotten bigger, and I could breathe easier. 10 minutes later, Hannah and Evan came into the room. Isaac. Hey, Hannah. Isaac. You're alive. Evan said with a grin as he gave me a gentler than usual fist pound. So when you gonna bust this joint, bro? They just came by with my CAT scan results. They want to do a few more tests, and if all goes well, they said the earliest they could release me will be tomorrow morning. Good to hear. Good to hear. So, have you talked to Destiny? I asked Hannah. I glanced over at Dad to see if he'd heard me. She rolled her eyes at me. You did hit your head. Of course, I've talked to Destiny. What kind of question is that? Where is she? I asked. Hannah glanced around the room, her eyes focusing on Dad deep in conversation with Mom and Josh on the other side of the curtain. Hannah, is that you? Mom asked. Hey, Aunt Julie, she said in a chipper voice. Hannah leaned closer to me and whispered, Destiny's hiding around the corner. She wasn't sure you'd want to see her, so she sent us in here to feel you out. She's here? Destiny still cared? She must have risked so much to show up here. I ached to feel her arms around me again, to hold her close to me, to smell the wildflower scent of her shampoo. Dad let loose a loud belt of laughter behind the curtain to my right, interrupting my thoughts. Panic jolted through me. If Dad saw her in here, he would only make things worse and push her further away. I had to warn her to leave before he saw her. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. Ugh, ow. My head throbbed, even with the painkillers. Whoa, down boy, Hannah sang, mistaking my panic as excitement. Evan, tell her to come in here. I'll go be a distraction. Hannah moved to the other side of the curtain, launching into her explanation of why she thought the Georgia Bulldogs would smash the Vols in the upcoming game. I shuddered. How could she allow those traitorous words to come from her mouth? For the first time all day, I chuckled. That ought to keep them busy for a while. I looked up and sobered. Destiny stood in the doorway with worry creasing her brow. Could Dad see her from where he sat behind the curtain? I winced as I imagined the verbal attack he'd launch once he discovered her presence. She stood by the bed, twisting her hands around the straps of her brown leather purse. A set of vulnerable blue eyes fixed on me. Isaac, she whispered. You shouldn't be here. My dad. I had to come. I was so worried about you. Had she come as a friend, or was she interested in rekindling our relationship? She got down on her knees and brought her face close to mine. I ached to run my fingers through her hair and tell her I wasn't going anywhere, but I didn't dare. Would we ever be okay? I reached out a hand to her face, but hesitated. Would this ever work, or would she just reject me again? Josh let out a raucous laugh from the other side of the curtain. You should go. The desire to be with her was intense, but it wasn't worth the risk. Sparing her feelings, protecting her from the threat of his attack, was more important. Destiny's face went white as she took a small step back. Please, I whispered. I don't want him to know you're here. Her eyes went wide. Are you ashamed of me? No, I wanted to tell her I needed her by my side as my girl, but I said, I just don't want him getting upset. She stared at me, her face void of emotion, before turning and disappearing through the door. I let out a heavy sigh. A strange mixture of relief and fear went through me. I felt relief because Dad was still laughing and chatting with Mom and Josh on the other side of the room like nothing significant had just happened. I felt fear because of the look on her face. Did she think I was sending her away because I was bitter over the breakup? Was I? No. I couldn't blame her. Dad had been so horrible to her. Did I really want her to leave because of Dad, or was that only an excuse? Maybe I was too much of a coward to face her. Why, oh why, did they have to be here? If they hadn't been, would I have had the courage to make things right? I had to try. If I had my phone, I'd text her right away to tell her how much I still cared. It was torture to know that just seconds ago she'd been so close, and I'd been unable to put my arms around her and hold her to my chest. I would have loved to have run my fingers through her hair, to tell her I wasn't going anywhere. But would she have let me? Just because she showed up didn't mean she wanted to get back together with me. Maybe she'd only come as a friend. The thought tortured me. Would I ever get her back? Chapter 16, Destiny. I turned from Isaac's room with a heavy heart. I was such a fool for coming. A sob escaped as I turned the corner. Evan was sitting in a waiting room next to a large fish tank filled with tropical fish. There was some kind of news show on the TV. He took one look at my tear-stained face and said, "Are you okay?" I shook my head and wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. What happened? Did Dr. Robinson say something rude to you? If he did, I'm giving him a piece of my mind. No, I whispered. It was Isaac. What do you mean? Evan asked. What did he say to you? He told me to go away, I said in a small voice. Hannah emerged from the hall. Why did you leave so soon? Evan studied my tear-stained face with compassion and turned to Hannah. Isaac sent her away. What? Why would he do that? Hannah asked, anger seeping into her words. Because, I said in a broken voice. Before the wreck. We got in this big fight. I told him I wanted to break things off. Oh, my gosh. Why didn't you tell me? Hannah asked. I was going to, but then you called me about the wreck and my problems just didn't seem that important anymore. The elevator doors opened, and Aspen stepped out with Sydney, Will and a bunch of their preppy friends. They carried bags and drinks from Smoky Bones like they were planning a casual barbecue in their backyard instead of heading to a hospital room. Aspen's eyes fell on me, and she stiffened. When did she get here? She shrilled with a look of revulsion on her face. Oh, that's just annoying. Maybe if we ignore it, it'll go away, Sydney said, referring to me like I was an irritation like a rash or a fruit fly buzzing around her face. Aspen angled her body away from us and muttered under her breath, but I still caught her words, loud and clear. That's the thing. She won't. It doesn't matter what I do, she keeps coming back like a disease. Something inside me snapped. I couldn't take one more snotty word from her. Not one more. What is your problem, Aspen? She turned to look at me, eyebrows raised like she hadn't expected me to challenge her. If you have something to say to me, say it to my face, I said. Excuse me? Why do you even care if I'm with Isaac? You have Will. Shouldn't that be good enough for you? Just because Isaac and I aren't together doesn't mean I don't still care about him. You don't care about him or his soul. Admit it. Aspen, you cheated on him. With his best friend. Y'all are the worst friends a guy could ever ask for. They reserve a special place in hell for people like you. I was on a roll. And then? You put on this huge act like you're worried about his salvation. You don't care one bit about his soul. You tossed him aside, but you don't want anyone else to have him either. This whole save Isaac thing isn't about saving him. This is you throwing a tantrum because he moved on. Well, guess what? As long as he wants me, I'm here for him. You might as well face it. You ruined your chances with him the day you shoved your tongue down his best friend's throat. And let me tell you, that was the worst choice you've made in your life, because he is the most amazing guy I've ever met. I choked out my last words. Had I made the worst choice in my life, too, by giving him up? Had I ruined everything? Was it too late to convince him to come back to me? The elevator doors opened, and a nurse wheeled a patient out in a wheelchair. I held the door open with my arm and motioned for Hannah and Evan to follow. When we were all on the elevator and the doors were closing, I heard Aspen say, "Who does she think she is?" Chapter 17, Destiny. I was alone in my room. Olivia was on a school trip. It was past midnight, but I couldn't sleep. Isaac had been out of the hospital for 2 days, but I hadn't heard a word from him. Was he still grounded from his phone, or had he told his dad we'd broken up, had his phone, and had moved on? I pulled open my nightstand drawer and took his hat out. I brought it to my face, but his smell had faded. I shoved it onto my head, remembering the first time I'd ever worn it. Aspen had looked so furious. Then I had a terrifying thought. What if she had gotten to him? Was he with her? Maybe that's why he wasn't trying harder to contact me. A small tap sounded on my window. Dude. That was freaky. Maybe it was just the wind knocking a tree branch against my window. What if my confrontation in the waiting room had backfired? I could have encouraged her to try to get him even harder. If she were smart, she would. He was such an incredible person. Pointing that out to her wasn't my brightest moment. I'd lost him. It was over, and I only had myself to blame. A second tap sounded against the glass, this time a little louder. I froze. Then 2 more taps in rapid succession. I pulled the cord on the blinds and gasped. In the darkness, a face appeared in my window. I used the light from my cell phone to reveal Isaac with a boyish grin on his face. I rocked back on my bed in astonishment. Isaac rapped on the window, this time as though to say, "Hey, you gonna open up, or what?" I lifted the window, grateful Olivia wasn't home. "What are you doing here?" Was that all I could say to him? He'd gone through a lot of trouble to see me. "It's nice to see you, too," he said with a smirk. "How did you get here?" I asked. Was he ungrounded? The tinkling sound of metal hitting metal came as he dangled something from his fingers. I swiped my keys from Dad's room while he was asleep. After checking about 30 times to see if you read my Facebook message, I couldn't take it anymore. "You sent me a Facebook message?" "It was the only way I had to communicate with you," he said. "We didn't really get the chance to talk in the hospital, and I wanted to let you know that no matter how long it took, I would still wait for you." I wish I'd read it. I'd been worried. "You were worried?" "I thought you were having second thoughts," I said in a quiet voice. He glanced off to the left, toward Michael's bedroom window. "Do you want to go somewhere safer, so we can talk?" My breath caught. Sneak out? It was like the retreat with Hannah all over again, but on steroids. If Hannah were here, what would she do? I smiled with reckless abandon. "Help me get this screen off." My heart thumped as he helped me remove the screen. This was the most rebellious thing I'd ever done, but after the suffering I'd been through the past 2 days, there was no way I could stay away from him. When the screen was gone, I swung my legs over the windowsill, and Isaac placed his hands around my waist, lifting me down like I weighed no more than a small child. With our fingers intertwined, he led me around the corner of the house through the moonlight. When we came to the usual spot where he parked, his truck wasn't there. "Where's your truck?" I didn't want the engine to wake anyone, so I parked it further away. When we reached it, out of view of the house, I wrapped my arms around his perfect body and breathed in sandalwood. He brushed the hair back from my face, rested his forehead on mine, and groaned. "I can't tell you how much I've missed you." "I've missed you, too," I said in a hushed tone. "Isaac. I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you. I need you to know something. Walking away from you on that soccer field was cowardly and stupid. I let the world get between us, and I shouldn't have." For a few seconds, he didn't move or speak. "I can't tell you how much that means to me." "Does that mean you forgive me?" I whispered. He brought his lips to mine in a tender kiss that felt like a promise. A really good promise. He tangled his fingers in my hair and pulled me closer to him, deepening the kiss. He pulled away. "Does that answer work for you?" I bit my lip. Yeah, I'm good with that." He opened my door and helped me inside. I turned back and saw him grinning at me in the glow of the dome light. He wore the same boyish smile he'd had outside my window. "What?" I asked. "Oh, nothing. You're just cute in your pajamas, that's all." "What?" I looked down at my pink sheep pajamas, the same ones I'd been made fun of for wearing at the retreat. Oh, snap. I'd been so distraught when he showed up I hadn't even thought to change. He released my hand and jogged around the truck to the driver's side. Climbing into his seat, he twisted the keys in the ignition. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." He took a left out of my driveway and drove toward the mountains behind my house. "I wasn't sure you'd go anywhere with me tonight," he said. "Well, you kicked me out of your hospital room and then didn't call to explain for 2 days. Destiny, I lost you because of my dad's big loud opinions before, and I didn't want to give him another chance to push you further away. I guess I accomplished that all on my own this time." "It's okay. I forgive you," I said. "You were only trying to protect what was left of our relationship." Isaac took my hand and brought my palm to his lips. He kissed it and curled my fingers over the spot where his lips had touched, like that simple action would somehow preserve the kiss there forever. 5 minutes later, he flipped on his right blinker and turned onto a gravel road that led up the side of the mountain at a steep incline. When we reached the top, the trees thinned, but there weren't any houses around. "What is this place?" "This is my land." "You have your own land?" I sputtered. "Yeah, when my grandpa died, he left it to me. He always wanted to build a dream house up here because the view is gorgeous, but life and financial trouble got in the way, so he never did. One day, I'll have to bring you back up here during the day to show you how beautiful it is. You can see green wooded hills for miles. One of my goals in life is to fulfill my grandpa's dream and build a house up here for my future family." Good thing it was so dark, because my jaw was hanging open. It was one of the most romantic things I'd ever heard Isaac say. I didn't feel comfortable commenting on his plans with his future wife, so I said, "Why didn't your grandpa leave it to your dad?" When he died, they weren't on speaking terms, and when the will was read, it was revealed that he wanted me to have it. "Wow, I bet it was awkward for your dad." "Meh. It's his own fault for being such a jerk." Isaac swung open his door, and his feet crunched onto the gravel. My door opened, and Isaac leaned in front of me to retrieve something from the floorboards. It was a green plaid blanket I hadn't noticed was at my feet. He tucked it under a muscular arm and took my hand with the other to help me step down from the truck. When he shut the door, the dome light faded, leaving us in darkness. The outlines of tall hardwoods stood like dark sentinels against the night sky, protecting us from the hatred in the world. He led me by the hand to a grassy spot and untangled his fingers from mine. Removing the blanket from under his arm, he unfolded it by snapping it open and letting it flutter to the ground. After lowering himself to the blanket, he rolled onto his side and patted the spot next to him. I curled my body against the protection of his warm muscled torso, and he repositioned onto his back so my head rested on his shoulder. He pointed upward. "See? This is why I like to come up here at night." I looked up and gasped. Numberless tiny specks of light covered the night sky, accented by a sliver of a moon suspended high above us. "It's beautiful." Since I lived far from town, the stars were bright by my house, but nothing like this. He took my hand and traced circles around the soft spot where my thumb connected to the rest of my fingers. His beautiful face was serious. "I can't tell you how happy I was when you showed up at the hospital the other night. It gave me hope that it wasn't over between us. I figured if you cared enough to come see me, you were more open to working things out." I swallowed a deep intake of the cold night air and released it. "I'm so sorry, I haven't been stronger for you." Isaac's thumb stopped swirling on my hand. His silence spoke volumes. "I hurt you, didn't I?" He looked away from me, the raw pain still clear there. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. He stared off into the distance at the city lights below. "I'm sorry, too." His expression was so beautiful and so conflicted. I was dealing with a lot of confusion during that conversation in my dad's office. I can imagine. I felt pretty confused, too. I needed some space to sort my thoughts out. As hard as it was for me, I can respect that. I would rather you take some time away from me to figure it out than hide your feelings, only to end up dumping me, anyway. Silence hung between us for a moment. Something amazing happened tonight, Isaac said. What happened? I was eating dinner with my family, and they were talking about the car accident and it wasn't adding up. Piece by piece, my memories started coming back to me. They did? I propped myself up on my elbow, so I could get a better look at him as he spoke. That's so great. Yeah, it should have been. His face darkened. I can see how it would be scary to remember that. Isaac shook his head. That was bad enough, but it wasn't what upset me. What do you mean? We didn't get into a wreck because of the rain. What are you talking about? We were driving home, and my dad demanded I break up with you. Yeah, I kind of expected that response. Me too. So I was ready for him. I was firm with him and told him no way. Heck yeah, I squealed. You know, it's really hot when you do that. Do what? I dunno, get all giggly. I've seen you do it before, and it's the cutest thing ever. Ah. I ran my fingertips over the back of his hand and then said, go on with your story. When I told him I went to church with you, he slammed on the brakes and refused to move until I promised to break up with you. What? I squeaked and sat upright on the blanket. Like in the middle of the road? Yeah, it was in the middle of the road. The rain was pouring, and no matter how I yelled for him to get out of the road, he wouldn't move. What? He's insane. Seriously. Isaac said, pulling up to a sitting position and looking back at me with wide eyes. That's what I told him. He leaned forward onto his hands. But it didn't make a difference. He kept demanding that I break up with you. You should have told him yes so you wouldn't get killed. No, he said. I would never do that. I'm not worth your life. That's debatable. I never would have been able to live with myself if I'd known our relationship was responsible for your death. No. My idiot father would have been responsible. Isaac scowled into the dark trees. You should have at least said you would to pacify him so you wouldn't die. That's not how I operate. So what happened next? I asked. Eventually, a car came around the bend and rear-ended us. I can't even imagine how horrible it must have been. Oh, it got worse, Isaac said. I knew what was coming, but I also knew he needed to talk it through. The collision pushed us into oncoming traffic. The last thing I remember was headlights coming toward us. I could be at the bottom of the ravine right now. My dad tried to kill me, Isaac said. He tried to kill me. He knew what he was doing. And it was all because of his hatred over Mormons. Well, you know what? I'm done with it. He's insane. But you were protected, I pointed out. It wasn't your time to go, or you wouldn't be here with me right now. You're right. I'm lucky to be alive. I caressed my hand down his cheek and across the stubble of his jawline, and as I did, gratitude swelled in my chest. Isaac sat still on the blanket beside me. Destiny, he breathed. Come closer to me. He stretched out on the blanket again, drawing me against his chest. I rested my head on the hollow of his shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around me. With his other hand, he ran his fingers down my arm. You know how you were witnessing about Jesus in my dad's office? My breath caught. Yeah, I said. It had been such a powerful experience for me. Well, I felt something, he said with wonder. I wanted to let loose a girly squeal, but I kept still. I had to let him finish. Isaac stared into the concourses of stars above us in the chilly night sky as he spoke. Do you remember the day we went to Aspen's house, and her grandpa talked to us about his Mormon friend? Yes, I'll never forget it. I was expecting him to say something nasty about Mormons, and then he was super nice about it. I got to know him pretty well this past summer. He's probably the most genuine Christian I've ever met. I can't believe Aspen's related to him. I shook my head. I couldn't believe it either. Anyway, I thought back to what Pastor Gordon said about his Mormon friend, and I finally understood what he was talking about. Dad's the one who's been misled. Isaac, I was so overcome with emotion, I couldn't form words. Destiny, he said with conviction. I know you're a true Christian. I didn't always know, but I do now. It was beyond amazing to hear him say those words. For a long time, I thought you were going to hell. You did? He nodded. I can't tell you how many sleepless nights I've had worrying about it. I couldn't imagine how he must have felt. I'd never felt that way about him. I believed, as a Baptist, he wouldn't go to hell. He could still be with Jesus, but he wouldn't be able to be sealed to his family or live with God the Father. It was awful, he said. The wall of hatred I built inside myself was awful, too. I hated Mormons for years. Why? I don't understand. Was it because of your dad? Michael was my best friend when you converted. When they took him from me. Nobody took Michael. He came all on his own. I get it now, but that's how I felt. Don't forget, I was only 10. I can see how a 10-year-old would feel that way. Especially when my dad kept me from him like that, Isaac said in a bitter voice. Your dad was the one who kept you from Michael? Michael thinks you hate him. You know that, right? Yeah, I know. He's coming around, though. He might have been at the paintball game. I'm not so sure now. He's a little worried about us being together. I guess I can't blame him too much for that, Isaac admitted. If you were so upset over Michael joining the church, you must have really been upset when Hannah started learning more about it. Isaac shifted away from me and sat up. I was terrified. I could tell. You seemed freaked out when she took the Book of Mormon. Yeah. He plucked a blade of grass and split it down the middle. And then I came into your life, but the Mormons had me, too. I was angry at the Mormons for a long time, he admitted. But today I realized I'm okay with it. I think it's why you came into my life. You're changing me. I can see that. Now we know why your dad's freaking out so much. Isaac laughed a little. Maybe there's something to this Mormon enticement he was talking about. He rolled back to face me. Even though we'd been dating for a few weeks, I still marveled at how stunning he was, even in the wan moonlight. He brought his lips to mine and kissed me tenderly. He pulled away just far enough to say, if this is what it feels like, then I say sign me up. I'm ready for more. I wriggled under the weight of his torso. Isaac, maybe you'd better take me home now. He leaned back off of me. Dang, I didn't mean it like that. Yeah, right, I chuckled. You lie. Okay. He laughed. Maybe. He ran a hand through his hair. But I would never act on it. I'm a wait until I am married type of person. Good, I said, snuggling back into the spot on his shoulder and inhaling the scent of sandalwood. So am I. But your rocking body aside, I really am feeling enticed. By me or by Mormons? Mostly just you, but I'd be open to learning more. I can't understand you until I know what you believe. Really? I kissed him until my heart burst with joy. I rolled onto my back and gazed up into the magnificence of the night sky just in time to see a shooting star zoom across the sky. Wow. Did you see that? Isaac asked in wonderment. Yeah. I settled deeper into his embrace. I did. I breathed a contented sigh. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but as I lay there with Isaac beside me, I knew together we'd be able to face anything the world threw at us. Thank you for listening to a bolder version of me. Book 3 of the Destiny Clark Saga. Written by Cindy Ray Hale. Text copyright 2019 by Cindy Ray Hale. Production copyright 2022 by Cindy Ray Hale.